This episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Blue Bridge Games. For the games and gifts you won't find anywhere else, head to Grand Rapids, Michigan's friendliest local game store, Blue Bridge Games. Blue Bridge Games carries an extensive line of board games, card games, role-playing tabletop games, Magic the Gathering, and more. Stop into their storefront on East Fulton or shop with them online at bluebridgegames.com.
You say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around our water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch Potatoes Unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because we've become essentially an LMD version of our original selves, while still retaining our soul, our essence. Magical, isn't it? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon Music to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Stranger Things, iZombie, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, Mr. Robot, Charmed, and Riverdale. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Doctor Who, The 100, The Crown, Supernatural, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. We'll be launching new panels covering Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Call the Midwife, The Animaniacs, Killing Eve, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends. We'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory, and we'll dive deep into the fantasy world of the magicians. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Basically, wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of the outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, just not the kind that involves the annihilation of Earth and the destruction of a timeline. That seems like overkill. Today's episode signifies the hallmark return of one of our panels hitherto consumed by sharks. In May of 2020, our small but robust panel, Forever on the Bubble, and following the progression of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the show we're covering tonight, jumped the proverbial shark when panelist Jen, sometimes known as Jen S., decided that she could not continue watching the show. This left panelist Micah and me, your moderator and chief couch potato, hanging on to the show that seemed to hang on in spite of itself, despite its irregular schedule and zany plot continuity, owing to its rather vocally supportive fan base. Since that time, and as is often the case, CPU is approached by people who want to join the conversation, and while today's brand new panelist wasn't necessarily looking to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when he first messaged us, here we sit, ready to wrap up the series. Thus today, our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel has triumphantly returned to the water cooler, ready to talk through seasons 6 and 7 and to look back at the whole show now that all is said and done, so that we might wrap up the show that just wrapped up this past summer. To wit, Season 6 aired from May 10th to August 2nd, 2019, with a total of 13 episodes, while Season 7 aired from May 27th to August 12th, 2020, with a total of 13 episodes. And we can't get started without a tiny bit of plot summary, so to remind you all, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is an American television series created for ABC by Joss Whedon, Jed Whedon, and Marissa Tanter-Rowan, based on the Marvel Comics organization S.H.I.E.L.D., or Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, a peacekeeping and spy agency in a world of superheroes. It is set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, and acknowledges the continuity of the franchise's films and other television series. The series was produced by ABC Studios, Marvel Television, and Mutant Enemy Productions, with Jed Whedon, Tanter-Rowan, and Jeffrey Bell serving as showrunners. The series stars Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, reprising his role from the film series alongside Ming-Na Wen, Brett Dalton, Chloe Bennett, Ian DeCastecker, and Elizabeth Henstridge. Nick Blood, Adrian Palicki, Henry Simmons, Luke Mitchell, John Hanna, Natalia Cordova-Buckley, and Jeff Ward joined in later seasons. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents deal with various unusual cases and enemies, including Hydra, Inhumans, life model decoys, or LMDs, alien species such as the Kree and Chronicoms, and time travel. Several episodes directly cross over with MCU films or other television series, notably Captain America the Winter Soldier, which significantly affected the series in its first season. In addition to Gregg, other actors from throughout the MCU also appear in guest roles. In Season 6, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents divide into two groups. One heads to space to find Fitz, who's played by Ian DeCastecker, who's lost following the last season's time traveling, while the other remains on Earth to face a team of mercenaries led by Sarge, a man that looks just like Coulson. Season 7 finds the team, including a life model decoy of Coulson, jumping throughout time to prevent the Chronicoms from establishing Earth as their new home, Chronica 3, and eradicating S.H.I.E.L.D. from history. Today, for the now final episode of our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Water Cooler series, our panel, consisting of Micah and I, as well as a brand new panelist, revives to talk specifically about Seasons 6 and 7, as well as to reflect back on the show as a whole now that the series has taken its final bow. Before we get started, of course, I'm going to take a moment to take the panel's temperature. After all, sometimes a show can take a turn for the better or worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon story evolution. Thus, as always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched all episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched any of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome, panel. Welcome back to Micah, and welcome generally to both of you. How are you doing?
Doing good. Ready to put this baby to bed. I just wish the rest of the family hadn't jumped the shark, but here we are.
But we have a new family member, Micah, and he's soldiering on with us. I know. Well, we'll talk about all of that shark jumping business while we, the remaining three, are left standing to defend Marvel's, or maybe not. Maybe we're going to pan it. I don't know. But we're here to talk about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And because this is a revived panel, so normally after a panel jumps the shark, although I say normally, we haven't really done a lot of these yet, but typically or expectedly when a panel jumps the shark, the last person or person standing would give their final thoughts. Well, our new panelist today was so gracious to join us, we actually get to do an actual panel discussion of the final two seasons. But I'm kind of shifting the format a little bit. We're combining some elements and reshuffling. So what I'd like you to do, Micah, you didn't actually start with this panel. I don't know if you recalled that. You jumped in sort of midway. So I thought for fun nostalgia's sake, since we're doing a looking back today as it is anyway, I'm going to have you do the looking back format of the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do, which means that you get to answer how you felt at the beginning starting to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and how you felt by the end after you'd watched all 7 seasons. But we're parsing this out with 2 character scales. I'm going to give you the first one we ever did for the very first few episodes so you can answer that question. And then I'm going to give you a second one that was tweaked based off our last one for the season 6 and 7 temperature checking. And then, okay. Micah, you get to go first, and then our new panelist will introduce himself, and then I will go last because that's what the moderator does. Sound good?
Let's do it.
Noah, you have to talk. It's a podcast.
I know. I didn't know if you wanted me to wait until I was finally introduced. I was being mysterious.
Okay.
Well, she just said your name, so now the
I can edit that. I can edit that.
That's why I was being so silent. I was like, we're going to play this out. We're going to let people wonder who this mysterious panelist is.
Okay.
And then finally, we just be like, it's Noah. And you know, Micah and I are like, oh.
All right, strike that, reverse it. We'll continue with the mystery.
Pretend you didn't hear what you just heard.
It's all editable, Micah. Anyway, okay, so we've got the plan. So we'll start with the first character question. Think of how you felt when you first started watching Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. How would you have rated your interest back then? Did you watch it because S.H.I.E.L.D. is your life? You believe the show has purpose, it means something, and the agency is damn good, like Phil Coulson? Did you watch it because you're a dutiful soldier and loyal, especially to Phil Coulson, or maybe the Whedons, like Melinda May? Did you watch it because you would do anything to be part of S.H.I.E.L.D. and you're hoping it's a means to an end, or that it will help you find your origin story, like Skye, aka Daisy? Did you watch it for all the awesome fictional technology like Fitz, or the radical science, real or fake, like Gemma Simmons? Did you watch it with a secret agenda as a mole? You really want nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. You're all about Hydra, like Grant Ward. Did you watch it because your wife or husband watched it, like Lance Hunter? Did you watch it because you wanted to protect those you care about and keep people safe, and you could use a few tips, like Mac? Did you watch it in spite of the fact that your wife or husband does not watch it, like Bobby Morse? Or you didn't watch it, they're not going to answer this, you didn't watch it because you're inhuman, like Lincoln Campbell? Micah, what do you say? How did you feel?
Well, just to set the tone for the level of anticipation and excitement in the household that me and Noah and our friend Taylor were a part of at the time, there's a video that comes up on my Facebook feed every time at this certain time of year where I was in front of the TV, tuned to ABC, as the title credits Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rolled onto televisions all over America for the first time, and I recorded this and was ready to record this. So the level of excitement at the time of release, I don't know if it's adequately encapsulated by those characters. I'd say maybe, if you, let's say Phil Coulson circa Avengers, as in Phil Coulson meeting Captain America is how I was meeting this show. That was definitely the impact, and I was ready for it. I was ready to dive into it. I will say there have been some Melinda May seasons along the way, because you had to get through them. You just had to get through them. But we got through them because we're good soldiers. I will say very definitively by the end of the show.
Wait, don't say by the end yet, because that's the second character question.
Oh, we haven't gone through those yet. So yes, I will say, let's say Coulson and May for this first dip.
And now we have a brand new panelist. Tell us, what is your name? So tell us your first name, just your first name, not your life story. We only need your first name. And then tell us how you came to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What made you start watching? How'd you find out about it? What kept you watching? And then answer the question just asked. Mysteriously go.
Mysterious. All right, well, my name is, drumroll, Noah.
Hi, Noah!
What that means. And to start off, I guess mine is truly like my fellow panelist / old roommate Micah. I started off with this complete Phil Coulson. I was completely loyal to everything that had to do with the MCU. So when they said that they were creating a show that was based in the MCU but following Phil Coulson, I just knew that I was going to watch every episode and I was going to be a loyal fan through and through. It took a lot to stay close to Phil, and there were times that I didn't. But to begin with, I was definitely a Phil Coulson.
All right. Well, welcome to CPU, Noah, and thanks for joining this panel and reviving it from shark-infested waters. And of course, I'm participating as well as moderating, as is often the case, and my name is Kylie, and I've mentioned that. I don't really remember what I said the first time, but I'm gonna say that I was May. I will repeat for those who might have been listening to this series the whole time. I'm a comic book appreciator, but not an aficionado, and certainly not to the level that Micah and Noah are. I think they're much more passionate comic book fans than I am, and where my passions are have typically been in the DC comic book universe. I've just gotten through a lot of Marvel live-action stuff, so I'm interested, but I'm nowhere near an expert. I watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., though, because I really liked Phil Coulson and Clark Gregg and the Avengers movie, and I was like, yeah, I want to watch this. Plus, Joss Whedon created it, and if you've listened to my voice on other podcasts, I'm a big fan of the Whedon show, so I figured this just sounds good. But I've always been a Melinda May, pretty much from the first. Like, I walked into it not knowing what to expect, but I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been really like a zigzag of enjoyment, though. Some is more enjoyable than others, but I'm still here. I made it till the end. And so let's talk about the end now. So we're covering season 6 and 7, but now you can answer this next rating scale about how you felt at the end. And you can sort of couch this in watching the last 2 seasons, at the very end, after the series finale, whatever you feel comfortable with. How would you rate S.H.I.E.L.D. by the time you finished the show? Did you watch it because S.H.I.E.L.D. was your life? You believe the show had purpose, it meant something. Also, this group of ragtag fighters and agents in charge of curbing supernatural, extraterrestrial, or other global threats became something of a family to you. No matter how many changes the characters may have undergone, the core essence of what made the show great in your eyes remained constant throughout all 7 seasons, and it was this quality that made the show so worth watching for you, like Phil Coulson. Did you watch it because you're a dutiful soldier and loyal, especially to Phil Coulson? Plus, you wanted to stick with it until the end because the show left you with a bunch of surprising emotions, not that you're ready to talk too deeply about them, lest you be motivated to engage in some violence, like Melinda May. Did you watch it and found renewed love for it in the final 2 seasons? It was a tough go there for a minute, but you realized that the writers knew what they were doing enough to bring you back into the fold, despite your better judgment. Besides, you cared deeply about the ensemble of characters. They were the best part to you, like Daisy Johnson, a.k.a. Quake. Did you watch it because you think it's smart if uneven? Because it wrestled with some salient moral questions and dilemmas with answers that are not necessarily neatly presented, and or because you have a thing for the Gemma Simmons character, like Leopold Fitz? Did you watch it because your significant other watched it, and though you worried that the show gave him ideas on how to be a darker, less desirable, evil version of himself, you also think he and the show pulled through with flying colors in the end, and or because you have a thing for the Leopold Fitz character, like Gemma Simmons? Did you come to watch the show late and liked the show well enough after all was said and done, but knew that you could not have done better if given the chance, even if you had to steal the basic ideas and improve upon them to do it, a fact that you would somewhat obnoxiously tell everyone who would listen, like Deke Shaw? Did you watch it because you wanted to protect those you care about, to keep people safe, and to shield them from pain you live with every day, and or because it's the right thing to do, even when you don't always like what you're watching, like Alfonso Mac Mackenzie? Or did you watch it but only distractedly so, and or you stopped watching it before the finale because every new situation involving the end of the world became more outlandish and hard to believe, plus no one would heed your warnings about what a poor addition the show is to pop culture, the Marvel Universe, your own brain, like this show was? Also, it was difficult for you to stay invested in this yo-yo of a show, like Elena Yo-Yo Rodriguez. What's your answer to this question?
I guess we can keep parallel structure to the last one. I will dive in first. This one with a small amendment of the last season rather than the last 2 seasons. I was very firmly Daisy/Quake/Sky, hashtag RIP Sky, hashtag never getting over it, hashtag Sky forever. I really hated that name change, and it never really felt right for me, but whatever. I'm not the writer. I don't make these decisions. But no, going into this last season, and we'll get into the reasons why season 6 is excluded from this outpouring of love and affection for the show. But knowing that season 7 was the last one, and also the tone they set with those first few episodes of like, we're going greatest hits, baby. You've stayed with us, so this is for you. This is for the people who watch the show. We don't care about new viewers. This is to give the crew of the show and the people who have watched it, who are essentially part of the crew as well, the send-off that everyone deserves. I was in send-off mode. I was receptive to all the things that they did in that vein, and so it was very much just like this was the last hurrah with the old crew. It was all about the ensemble of characters. I liked the plot, but it was, at its core, it was all about these characters who I'd come to really, really appreciate over the years.
For me, I would say season 6 is a yo-yo, where season 7 is more of a daisy. There's just stuff about season 6 and even a little bit of season 5 that's just like, I'm getting through it I'm trying. It took a lot, and I think mine's mostly from a comic book reader standpoint. I don't know if you guys talked about this a lot in the original, but like, because I'm so much of a Marvel head, and Micah can attest, I barely picked up a DC comic until I became an adult, where I finally was able to appreciate DC Comics. So Marvel was all that I had, and a huge thing about the earlier seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were Easter eggs. That was something that I could always grasp onto. I can hit that point where they're like, oh, they're going to mention this character, or ooh, it's getting ready to build up to so-and-so. And with season 6, I really felt that lacking. It didn't have that just like, here is an Easter egg. Like, there were callbacks to previous seasons, but it was less Easter egg finding. It was less of an egg hunt. It was more of just like, all right, we're plunging out story, and it's outlandish. Maybe it's like a comic book, but it's not like a comic that you would have already read. So I thought that was weird. But season 7, just pure nostalgia. I loved the different references. It felt to me like Community, where they had like each episode with its own little genre or its own little pocket, and I could really feel that, and I just genuinely enjoyed it. So definitely Daisy, even maybe a little bit of May for season 7.
And for me, I think I thought about this and I still don't have a great answer. I think I'm landing on a combination of May and Daisy. I agree. I think I liked season 5. I'm probably one of the lone defenders of season 5. I liked the space arc a lot, but season 6, that took a lot for me as well to kind of come along for the ride. I think ultimately they pulled it off and they stitched everything together that they needed to stitch, but it was to me, season 6 was probably the least amount of fun I had since the first half of season 1. But then season 7, I agree, they put it all back in there. They brought in guest stars that we've seen before. They brought in more of the MCU Easter eggs. We got to see even things I recognize, which I don't always recognize the things. So I was like, ooh, so much fun. And plus the different motifs, the different opening titles, the different costuming. I mean, they threw some money at the final season, but they also really paid attention to the story and made sure that it hit really good beats by the end. And I think that's why I'm left with being Daisy. I said the last 2 seasons in the description, but I'm amending my own character question and agreeing with what Micah said, because I feel pretty strongly along that line as well. Well, welcome. Now we're going to talk about this. So if you've been following our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. water cooler series, we've covered it since the very beginning, kind of in chunks here and there. We're doing the last chunk now. We did talk about season 5. We had some passion about the season 5. Micah, you liked season 5, I think, too.
I did like season 5. Really, the only rough spots, and what a rough spot for a TV show equates to in my brain, is that I don't really remember a lot of it. If I remember things and my opinion is negative, then that means you did a very bad job, TV people. But if it's just general, not very good, then I will generally just... I'm not rewatching The Office 18 times. I got my Netflix queue keeps moving. We ain't got room for your crap seasons, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We gotta use that memory space for new shows. But yeah, no, so my commentary on season 6 not gonna be the most detailed, because I really remember the very beginning of it, which was... There's another Coulson lookalike, which, sure, like at this point in the show, I'm like, yeah, whatever. What, alternate dimension? That's a perfectly fine explanation for that. I don't need more explanation. They gave us more explanation, and it was bad. So, didn't like that. Like you were saying, in terms of not recognizing things from the comics, and what Noah was saying is that there were throwbacks into the series itself, but not in the comics. I have not read anything in the Marvel comics to confirm or deny that plotline of these extra-dimensional beings who were who always seem to need human hosts. That happens in a lot of shows where it's like, these things exist outside of space and time and can crush reality, but they have to inhabit this homeless man first. Like, that's a bit of an old trope. So it was a bit of that. I haven't seen anything to clue in the comics about those people. I haven't seen the Shrike, which honestly are probably a better plot point in that season than the beings themselves. I hadn't seen anything from that. It seemed a little bit that they'd run out of good ideas and just kind of went with what they had. They had the funding to make a season, and so it was very, very much like season 4 of Heroes, and that it was just like, I mean, yeah, like, this holds together, I guess, but also I resent you all for making me watch this. You took my loyalty to the show, and you took advantage of it. You knew I would watch this, and you still made this season. But, yeah, so that's... Season 6 was not... It was not, I think, nearly as solid, because even in some of the other slump seasons for the show, even when you were like, this is not really engaging, it was still secure within its own framework. No pun intended.
Haha. Haha.
Yeah, season 6 was just... It almost seemed like it was made by completely different people who didn't watch any of the show before it, except enough to throw in those Easter eggs.
Yeah, for sure. It seems almost, to me, it seems like season 6 were people who watched, like, the last 4 episodes of season 5, and they were like, all right, continue. And they were like, continue what? The story. What? Oh, like from here. Yeah, sure. Because after a certain point, they became S.W.O.R.D., but they were still S.H.I.E.L.D., but they were out in space, but it was still called the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there was no connection to S.W.O.R.D., and again, from a comic book person's standpoint, like, I was like, okay, so now you're Agents of S.W.O.R.D., you didn't even, like, decide to do that cool thing where they were, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., LMD, or like, they didn't decide to change it to where it was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., S.W.O.R.D. initiative. They didn't do any of that. They just expected people to agree that space was the next voyage and this is where we were at. And I was just like, yeah, but no, that isn't the next step. You gotta tell us. There's just, even season 5, I think I understand your guys' previous member when they said they can't continue because of the jumping of the shark. Because yes, once they jumped into space, things did start to get rocky. But I loved Coulson, I loved May, I loved the character so much that I was willing to go on this weird, bumpy ride, hoping that it was going to land back. And it did. And even then, like, yeah, season 6, like Micah said, I had to watch recaps before this episode, and if you were to still ask me to give a good synopsis of season 6, I can't.
I just would like to defend the point that, because I enjoyed season 5, yes, they were in space, but technically every season is in space because Earth is in space. And they were still on Earth. It was just in very, very bad shape. Like, it all took place within the lighthouse. Like, it was technically the same setting. It was just got its whole world, literally the whole world, got its world rocked. And that was the lighthouse they were in. I do think it was weaker when they were just, like, out in space while Earth was still there, to then split those things, because Kylie, you gave the big definition of the H is homeland, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, gotta be in the homeland to do homeland things, and they were like, "Nah, we're going." I can't remember a single name of a planet they went to. It was just Daisy and Simmons, Batman shakedowning a lot of random people. Like, there was probably a very stable galactic underworld, and then all of a sudden there's like, hey, where's this nerd? Like, we don't know. And then they're gone. That's, a lot of people probably have, their S.H.I.E.L.D. and S.W.O.R.D. are going to be very busy with just complaints from just that little stint of like, hey, yeah, you disrupted a global economy by intercepting this one ship. We gotta have a talk about that. But
some repercussions here.
But yeah, no, season 5, while it was in space, it was just slightly more spacey while still being on Earth. So I will just want to interject that.
Well, and
My apologies.
What I will say for season 5 is that the plot progression with that, it was a big risk, and as purely from a storytelling perspective, I think they serviced what they needed to service in season 5. Season 6, they didn't really. And it's funny because I went to C2E2 in the spring before season 6 came out, and I watched a panel with Migna and Clark Gregg, and they were so excited by the direction of season 6. They're like, yeah, Phil Coulson, we don't know what his fate's going to be, but you're going to be so surprised and you're going to be so engaged. And I'm glad they were excited. I just remember sitting down and thinking, this is not what the stars of this show build for me, because it was a very, very big leap to believe that somehow his DNA got caught in some other dimension, which then birthed some sort of godlike host. I don't know. It was just I couldn't buy the explanation. For me, the time that they were in space in season 6 looking for Fitz was the more emotionally centered part of the story. So I was actually along for the Batmaning by the women, but less along for the stuff that was going on Earth, because I was like, how does this even make sense? It doesn't. And by making sense, I mean in the world of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where you're already suspending a lot of disbelief 90% of the time.
There's only so much suspension you can do, especially when, that's something that happens with a lot of sci-fi movies with, CinemaSins. It's like, okay, you've established all these outlandish things, but then you can't solve this very simple problem with one of those things. And yeah, like you said with the DNA thing, man, he's from another. He's an alternate Coulson. Okay, cool. Not everybody in an alternate parallel universes has the same name. He might still I don't know who that is. But when they explained it more, it's like we were talking about Lost a little earlier, Kylie. The more they explained it, the worse it became. It's very much season 6 was very much a journey season because the destination was not built well. So it was like, all right, I'll just try to enjoy the dialogue between characters who have earned my respect and loyalty at this point, and we'll just glaze over what they're actually dealing with. Oh, man.
But that's also what threw it off balance, because the character we were watching wasn't actually Coulson or even a very good duplicate of him. It was a whole other version who'd grown up in a whole other place, and then had to sort of remember that he sort of kind of looked like this guy that he sort of kind of remembers in his memory, that everybody else is like, you look like Coulson, wah! And then it was very maudlin until the Shrike came, and then it was like, all the things are happening now. So.
And listen, I'm all for letting actors who have been on a show for a long, long time stretch those legs for a while. Like the good old Jared Padalecki when he was possessed by an angel in season 11 or something. It was a long way down the show.
It was 9, I think, Micah, if you're going to ask.
Well, excuse me, Chief Potato, you would be the one to know.
And also Supernatural, hearts.
I'm building up to finishing it. I'll finish it soon. Yeah, it's like, hey, look at you being able to use your craft instead of being the same character. And I will say, Clark Gregg played Coulson's very well throughout the entirety of the show. I did like seeing him play the character of Sarge. It's just where, especially naming him Sarge, you would still think okay, these guys are refugees essentially from a ruined dimension trying to smoke them if you got them to our world, which is now where our conflict comes from. It really was the bringing in. Do you know the name of these spirit beings, Kylie? Because if not, I'm gonna look them up because I wanna know who I'm angry at.
Yeah, not off the top of my head. See, this is why we do the Talking Boys.
the fear dimension, the fear cronies, whoever they were. I was just yeah, call them fear. I'm just not interested in them at all. No. It wasn't we're going to open a gate and let everybody through. That's another plot point that we've seen in shows a billion times. And there's one of them that's over here who isn't all-powerful, but for some reason, when they get everybody over here, they will be all-powerful. Once again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, another part of it was the actress who played the main fear crony. I was just not a fan, and that it doesn't happen a lot that someone's performance can take me out of the rest of my season. Dove Cameron dabbled with that in season 5. I was a little bit, and that character was, but we're not talking about that season. Not talking about the season, talking about season 6 and 7. That was another little bit. If you're going to bring in a new person who will be a season regular, at least for this one season, you have to be very, very conscientious with who you bring in and if they're going to fit. I could definitely see her being a villain in some other shows, but she just didn't. She didn't mesh as well, and also splitting the party did also decrease from that dynamic that I think is what kept so many people watching the show. Is like, we like all of them together doing these things, and we like Fitzsimmons. And for so much of this show, it's been like, we're going toward Fitzsimmons. There's a Fitz, there's a Simmons, and they're trying to be Fitzsimmons. We're not going to let them, because drama. This didn't feel the same way as that in previous seasons. It just felt like, and honestly, you might know, maybe Ian DeCastecker was doing other things. I know he was in a movie called Overlord.
That was season 7's problem, but not season 6.
Yeah, with season 7, it seemed more like something they were trying to work around rather than something that was an organic part of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. That like the whole Fitzsimmons thing, like leading up to season 6, you're like, okay, we get it. They're the destined star-crossed lovers. They'll never quite make it because everything's in the way. But by the time season 6 rolled around, I was like, Jesus Christ! Now they just can't even be in the same goddamn timeline. This is Jesus. It got so bad, and that was the whole thing. Is the fact that in season 6, by splitting the party, the whole point of like season 1 through 5 that made it so entertaining was watching Phil be the father of this like ragtag group of misfit toys that were just going around trying to solve mysteries, like some weird ass Marvel Scooby-Doo detective agency, and they were like doing all these things. And by the time season 5 rolled around, when you thought they would be like a well-oiled machine, by the time you think they'd have all their ducks in a row, they're like, all right, well, throw a meteor at them and split them up. They just try to find the biggest way to screw up everything instead of allowing them to at least work together. Like, I would have accepted, like, the world blowing up and them all together having, season 5. Season 6, like, them all working together to get Fitz, but they split them off, and then they had the Batman gang, as Michael put it, and then the other gang doing whatever. I didn't like the splitting up. I didn't like how everyone was disjointed. And even in bits of season 7, even though I love season 7, it had that too, where it was like, now we have Mac and Deke in the 80s, and we have so-and-so in the 70s. Like,
we're not going to badmouth the Mac and Deke episode, and we'll get to that when we get
to
that.
That was lovely. But
I've got praises to sing about that episode.
But the whole disjointedness of it all, like, it just, like, that was again, there were very few episodes that I disliked in season 7, but they kept the disjointedness going over from season 6 until it finally started to mesh and they got together and started, like, down the line working as a team again.
I will say one of the big factors is that the seasons have shortened throughout the series. So generally we were able to approach up until even with season 5, we were able to approach things in the half and half chunk and be able to analyze those that way, because the first half of season 5 is the destroyed future. Second half, we're dealing with Glenn Talbot becoming Gravitonium Man, which was actually pretty cool. But with season 6, it was just like this. It could have very easily been first half of the season find Fitz, second half we're dealing with Sargent and these people, but they did both and stretched both too thin at the same time, which it just, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. You only got the episodes that you got. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kylie. Season 6 was when they got moved to Fridays, or was that
season 6 was when they got moved to Fridays and in the summertime. So both the last 2 seasons were 13 episodes. Both the last 2 seasons were on Friday night airing, and both were in the summer.
To the creative team's credit, they were rolling with a lot of their own personal punches, trying to generate content for us to enjoy. But I do think that, especially the timing of bringing in Sarge and splitting the party was poor, because we had just lost Coulson in a finalized way, quote unquote, and now it's like, all right, Mac's the new director. Let's see this new Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let's see what they're dealing with. It would have been much better if they'd had the season time to do it. Have another season of domestic threats to allow that team to find its feet, but instead they instantly got hit with this new Coulson threat and also the team being split, so we didn't even really get to see that new team find its sea legs until season 7. that's a long time to wait, but I do think in the end it paid off well.
Which we're also talking about ideas that remind us of other things. We were talking about Stargate earlier, so now that we're talking about these other beings, these godlike figures that come in and out of Earth's history, that was basically ripping off Stargate. It just didn't have the gate, which is what I thought when I was watching it. There was one gate.
Yeah, there's the one gate.
Right.
Like that one gate, and the inside of the gate was just like sand. I know they have budget things, but like if the portal to the place is very blue and wavy, I expect more than just a sepia tone version of Earth. It was very Once Upon a Time in the Underland arc. I was like, okay, this is for saving money. And like once again, I respect that creative teams have to save money and deal with things in a pragmatic standpoint, but I think it's better to choose an idea that can be done 100% in a cheap way than choose an idea that's too expensive and then do that as much as you can to budget, because then you do end up with half-baked things like that. I'm remembering, a rare compliment, I do remember in Season 6 the device of the Shrike forming these towers, and that was like kind of the point. I did like that point where they were like hunting these towers down and trying to destroy those. It gave a little bit more meaning to the Shrike being part of the story. And like, yeah, they deal with extra normal situations. It is possible that there's like, nope, there's just parasite flying fish, and they have nothing to do with the main plot, but it's just what happens. Our stories don't always fall into neat little rows. Sometimes they overlap, and now we gotta deal with this. That would have been perfectly acceptable, but I do like when they can find a way to use that and loop it together. So there you go. There you go, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. people who are definitely listening to me talk right now out of
Tweet at
experience in the television industry. There's your one rose for Season 6.
Well, and I was going to say that the Shrike actually made for some good action sequences, so even if they stiffed the budget on the other side of the gate with Quetzalcoatl or whatever his name was, they at least threw it at the semi-truck chase. Do you remember that? When they were barreling toward that tower? That was pretty good. It was a high note.
What I think, when Michael talking about budgeting, it made me realize that, and maybe I'm going off of a huge jump, but Season 6 just really reminded me of the Inhuman season.
How so?
Because, I'm just thinking about, right before the Inhumans, because you have the whole fight, the ending fight where they're in the temple, they're in the pyramid thing, and for some reason it just oddly really reminds me of right before Davey got out, right before the Inhumans, where they're, messing with the black crystals, right before Coulson, has to cut off his hand. And one guy sacrifices himself. I don't remember his name. He's the other black guy.
Trip,
right.
yeah, Trip.
When
Michael
he
was
showed
real
up
upset.
In the framework, I was like, oh man, how you doing, buddy? But that we lost Trip at the same time that we got Mac, and I will say Mac in his first couple of episodes, I was like, is this guy? But no, he firmly is in the fam.
I love Mac. I love Mac and Yo-Yo. Oh, they're so... I like shipping all the ships on this show. It's kind of fun. I love Fitz. He's my favorite character. So Fitzsimmons, I'm all about that story. But when they started pairing off Mac and Yo-Yo, I was like, that's so cute. Because I'm a girl.
I liked them because of how real they were. They would argue. They would, she'd be talking where she was like, hey, get your head out of your ass. He's like, hey, baby.
I'm working through some stuff. My computer.
My mom and dad.
My computer daughter is gonna get deleted. Give me a second. Yeah,
I have to kill my robot parents. Can you back off?
Taking a second. I mean, it's always tough to kill your robot parents, as we all know.
Yes,
but
relatable. # no.
Stopping off with ships for a second. This is a bit of a series overview, but only specifically about the ships. We'll get into that.
Sure.
I'll save the meat for later. But the only acceptable ships that I've had for Daisy were Grant Ward when he was a good guy, Grant Ward for half of the time that he was a bad guy.
Sure, he was very charming and smart.
Framework Grant Ward. It was lovely to see him return to being a good guy.
Yeah.
Ghost Rider, who, I don't know where they found that guy, but if they make a movie, get that guy back. He was impeccable. I loved his performance.
Much better than Nicolas Cage.
They were supposed to create a show where he was going to be in it.
Yeah, they had talked about it, but they never went forward.
Backdoor pilots
Also
from Agents of
missing
S.H.I.E.L.D.
some-
don't really work.
Yeah, the most wanted.
Personally, I didn't want that show at all. Never a huge fan of Hunter. Adrienne Palicki, love her. She's been in so many things that I've seen over the years.
She's in the Orville now.
Of course.
She was also the original, she was the first iteration of Supergirl on Smallville, which was not the real one, and it was very weird. She melted a car with her hands. Whatever. But yeah, no. So Ghost Rider's on there, the multiple iterations of Grant Ward, and for a very small second before Yo-Yo appeared, and also before Mac and Daisy solidified their big bro, little sis relationship, I was like, I wouldn't be mad about this, but other than that, nobody until Sousa. I did not like Lincoln for her a single second of a single thought. He was a fine gentleman. Dope powers. His ending with Hive, I never thought I was going to get emotional when Hive died. Lincoln was a big factor in making that scene what it was. Excellent work. Hated him for her every step of the way.
They didn't really have much chemistry, and he was on the Tomorrow People, and I feel like he was better on that show than he was in this role, which isn't to say that the role was bad or he was bad. It's just that I didn't feel like he fit in the ensemble as well as some of the other coming and going characters.
He was a bit of a mimbo. I think they brought him onto the show so she would have a love interest.
Yeah.
And that's not how you write a character. It doesn't end well when you're like, you are here for one specific purpose. It's like, flesh him out. All he got was lightning, I am a doctor. That was really, I can't name anything else about him.
Now you two kids.
That was it. Somebody found they were playing with other superhero dolls and they needed a love interest for their Quake doll, so they went and stole one of their sister's Ken dolls from Dr. Ken, and they were like, you got lightning because you static shocked me when I picked you up. So there you go. That was about how much thought went into that ship, and about how much thought went into a lot of things from season 6. Just like,
Whoa.
dig around the toy box, see what we got. Sure, why not? Give them...
All these different alien toys.
I re-looked at some of these names. Pachakutik.
Oh, yes.
No good. No good on that one. Izel was the main...
She was the villain.
Villain lady. Did not appreciate her very much, as I stated. But, yeah, no, that was... Also, it did seem very... You mentioned Quetzalcoatl earlier. It did seem very... like Aztec reminiscent, and I was like, love Clark Gregg, we ought to get somebody that's not white to be that kind of, really, that's the DNA that got in there? Okay, sure.
That's why I'm saying it was just screwy, and it felt like a Stargate ripoff, and yeah, what you just said. I was like, this doesn't, I don't know. It was a good try, and I think if they'd had the full 22 episode season like they'd had previously, because what they used to do with those first halves and second halves is say, here's the first half, here's the second half, and in the last 2 or 3 episodes, we're going to tie both of them together, and you're going to be wowed with what you saw, because they seem so unrelated. Like, even the Ghost Rider half came back in the second half of his season to have on the Darkhold half, where it affected everything there. So with season 6, they didn't have that benefit. Everything was running parallel. It did not really tie together because everything we met. What is the main Chronicon's name again? The guy we know and like. Enoch. Yes, we met Enoch in season 6. We got some seed of that story, and that's basically what they kind of built on into season 7. And we also had to spend a lot more time with Deke. I don't know why they kept Deke.
Season 6 Deke was not only a betrayal of Season 5 Deke, but also just bad in general. The puppy dog thing with... At least they acknowledged the puppy dog thing with Daisy, because that was getting annoying as hell. But at least they, like, said it in canon, like, hey, fix yourself, maybe? And, like, he eventually did. In the way they introduced him in Season 5, it was like, is this a Star-Lord character? Are we about to get a Star-Lord for this show? No, you're not. He's addicted to Zivia, or whatever bad alcoholic drink he loved so much. Yeah, no, I was not a big fan of Deke for either of those.
Either one.
That guy, you know the one. I was not a big fan of him.
Puppy dog one.
You know, the the beard guy. Yeah, you know beard guy. Yeah, no, he might as well have been beard guy for most of those seasons. I liked when they made him, like, own his own startup. I felt that was very on brand with who his character would be in. Honestly, like, just growing up the spawn of Fitzsimmons in a regular, not split apart world, I think that's very on brand, as he would own some massive tech company at a young age. But no, moving into season 7 is like, that's when they hit a lot of strides and figured out how to fit the new ensemble together. And I was a fan of Deke. Maybe not right at the beginning. Actually, no, I think I was a fan of Deke for all of season 7. Like, they really upped their game writing for him.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I was a fan. I grew to enjoy his character because in the beginning like the first 3 episodes, well, pretty much, yeah, like the first half of season 7 is Matt just telling Deke to stop it. It's just constantly like, hey, and then it's Daisy being a bitch and being like, she was Palpatine for it. She was like, do it. And he was just like, yeah, if I do it, she'll sleep with me. And Mac's like, no, stop that.
Timeline. It was a lot of everyone going, hey, no, timeline. Specifically Gemma. It's like, oh, no, timeline.
Which I was gonna bring this question. Do you think that it would have made more sense if they combined season 6 and said, like, they like let them know, like, hey, this is going to be our last season right before 6, but you're gonna get your 26 episodes? And they kind of combine the 2 into one final season. Instead of 13 episodes here, 13 episodes here, they would have been able to get the 26 full and maybe mix together the time traveling with the...
So, Wrinkle, they were told that the last 2 seasons were their last seasons. So they knew going into season 6 that these 2 would be their last. And I think if they had kept them in the normal fall to spring airing slot, then those 13 and 13 would have run as a 26 last season. But because they decided to put it in the summer, which it was weird for them because this show, it's the last standing Marvel TV show now and is done. Everything else is ended or canceled before the Disney Plus wave starts. And so they were basically trying to put nails in coffins for all their final contracts for how they had proliferated this stuff. So it really came down to a showrunner's decision to split these stories the way they did. So in context of your question, go ahead and speculate, but I don't think it's the network this time. I mean, I think the network was trying to get rid of the show, recognizing that it still had a lot of fan support and things like that, but ultimately the 13 and 13 and the way it was mapped was the show.
I'm glad they're separate for no other reason than to keep season 7 clean of the filth.
Wow! We went from this was messy and disjointed to filth.
You go sit in the corner season 6. You'll get food after all the other seasons eat. No, not gonna get that harsh about it. I do think that the introduction for the Chronicoms and their plot, I think, was done not well in terms of for season 6, but in terms of serving season 7, because they were really not even C, maybe D plot. It was very, very background, which is a good way to slow burn the premise for your next season, rather than making it seem like something brand new has happened. You can say, like, oh, the repercussions of these actions is now coming to fruition for this season. And I do think the Chronicoms kind of running in the background like that did work. I also wouldn't, speaking of, since you bring up that theme of them, they would usually do like 40% of an arc, 40% of an arc. The last little bit is going to be like a combination of the two. I don't see anything, and I'm a very creative person, not to toot my own horn, I don't think I could figure out a good way to bring in the Izel Shrike stuff to season 7. I think season 7 was and had everything that it needed to have in order to be everything that it needed to be. I think anything more would have muddied that a little bit.
Okay.
Quite honestly, I wish they had spent maybe more of season 6 developing the Chronicoms, since they became more important, rather than took the detour they took with the alternate dimension and the Shrike storyline, because I don't think, if you were to go back and rewatch the show, and this will be part of what we talk about in the looking back portion, you don't need to watch season 6 because almost none of the events, but for Fitz's disappearance and everybody chasing Fitz all the time, because that carried over into season 7, really informed the story going forward. And it had nothing to do with the story in the past. So, aside from May and Coulson couldn't be together, and Coulson died, and May was sad, and then May saw a Coulson lookalike. That was the other emotional heft on the season. And Daisy, too, with their father-daughter dynamic. It just, yeah, you don't need season 6. You could skip over it, aside from maybe the last 2 episodes, and you would be fine going from 5 into 7. Which, to me, is a bad sign in terms of the long road mapping of a series, but they probably were surprised a little too. But we keep wanting to push toward any other comments about season 6 before we move?
Do we have time?
You can be as emotionally, you can say all the things.
It wasn't good. I feel like season 5 is really where I felt like it was like where they were truly like, okay, we are no longer in the MCU. And I think that really hurt it. I was thinking, because season 6 and season 7 were happening around the time, season 6 was happening around the time of Endgame.
Yep.
And the fact that the last connection we really had to the MCU as a whole was Winter Soldier with bits and pieces, very small bits and pieces. Even when they were in space, we didn't have any Guardians of the Galaxy references. We didn't have any Thanos nothing of this bigger world that they created. And I was expecting season 6 and season 7 to be like, they have half the team. They're trying to figure out what happened during the so-called snap. They can't get in contact with all these people, and they're trying to get stuff happening. Even if they never directly connect with the Avengers, even just off base, like them handling very small world stuff in that time in which half the population is gone, but we got none of it. So that was, by the time season 5 and 6 rolled around, and I noticed that they stopped connecting to the TV show, they stopped connecting to the overall universe that they were so proud of being connected to in the first 2-3 seasons. It took me out of it. Why build this world and then immediately shit on it by saying it doesn't exist?
Sure.
Yeah, that would have been...
I think a lot of that is over our head, above our pay grade stuff. If Kevin Feige had wanted to keep it in the loop, he had the power to do it, and he had the mind. I will never fault him his long-term planning mind. The first saga of the MCU is the most impressive thing that has happened in 100 years of cinema. I'll just say it. I'll throw that gauntlet down. All you cinemaphiles who are out there listening, if you guys are like, oh, no, James Bond, I literally don't even know a comparable thing to compare it to, because 30 films in, what, 10, was it 20 years?
Less than that. It's 10 years.
Less than that.
10 or 15 years.
Nothing like that has ever even approached happening in anything that we've seen. So there are people saying, like, oh, Endgame was
the Law and Order universe.
Maybe. That might be the only contender.
But that doesn't really count.
We'll touch back on this in 20 years when Grey's Anatomy has its series finale. God willing.
Oh, Lord.
Ellen Pompeo's own kids, who have been born after the show, will now be on the show as doctors. Yeah, no. I think that was impressive. There were people talking about Endgame being 3 hours long was too long, and I was like, you realize this is the capstone to an insane thing, right? Like, this, no one could have predicted this would ever exist, and now it has. I think 3 hours is fine for that, which, conversely, Season 7 really didn't feel as... That's the kind of thing that I liked about it. It wasn't this big, like, this is our last season, we're gonna take it all away. Like, they were just like, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have a good time. The stakes are high, as they have always been. But the ride there, we're going to focus more on making it an enjoyable ride than making it something that's super hard-hitting and dramatic. I will say, just to put my final nail in the coffin of Season 6, I liked that they kind of, like, snatched Finn back and made his powers relevant again in terms of, like, you got to recreate these monoliths so we can open our gate. And he was like, I don't want to. She was like,
Flint.
He's like, okay.
You said Finn. It's Flint.
Flint. It is Flint.
Yeah, I was like,
Finn.
who's Finn? And I was going, that's a different TV show. And then it went Flint.
I had most of the letters.
Okay.
I had the all-star letters from that word. The L and the T were off in space looking for...
Uh-huh.
But they were looking for Fitz, because you can't spell Fitz without that. Okay. Yeah, no, so I did like that little bit of a callback, because Season 6 also really seemed like, besides Deke, they were like, we're not going to think that Season 5 ever happened. And I was like, why? It was solid. That was pretty good. You could have just acknowledged it. It's fine. But I do think now, and I've had to look this up on the fandom Wikipedia to fully comprehend it, the third monolith is... creation, and they never that's a super easy thing to say, and they never really said it. They were just like surprised there's 3 of them, and we were like, what? And then they exploded and opened to the fear dimension, which there were a lot of nice callbacks in that episode. Seeing Deathlock again, that was cool. But other than that, I was like, really? The fear dimension? Like, sure, that's something that can exist, but what? But, like, I think that they could have used, especially for this arc of these extra-dimensional beings, they could have used those monoliths, I think, a little more interestingly. They had, like, a little bit of a ring of Infinity Stone to them. You could have used them in more, like, they're going, like, maybe they're systematically unmaking the Earth or making it into their new planet. We have to stop that progress. Something along those lines. But, yeah, that was the last thought that I had about Season 6.
I actually agree with part of what you just said and part of what Noah just said, because there was that whole awkward disowning chapter, and I don't know who disowned who, divorcing, I guess, from the MCU, and that was one of my major questions at the time, having just watched, what's the first half of that? Avengers?
Infinity War.
Infinity War, exactly. Having just watched Infinity War, I was like, why aren't they dealing with the world that we know is going on in the MCU? And they could have sprinkled that in and tied it together, even if they were going to use the extra-dimensional beings. That's where I agree with your part, Micah. If they'd have done a little bit more to connect the concepts that they had with the different stones and the alien civilizations that they'd been encountering. I mean, the Kree was a through line for a very long time to the ideas that they kind of threw out there in the Avengers movies. They probably could have, at least, without getting too far into it, they could have made it feel a little bit more whole and a little bit more, I guess, whole is the word that's coming to my mind, because to me Season 6 felt like a shallow version even of what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had been. A lot of different factors, but without MCU, without the ensemble being together, and with a Phil Coulson that's not really Phil Coulson with a bad explanation, it just, it was a bit of a struggle, is my final nail in that coffin. Noah, you have any final nails on Season 6?
No, but can I be the person that turns it down into the casket? The person that's just, like, wheeling it down, just like, all right, we're done now.
Oh, you mean the automatic
we're done?
thing.
As in, let's go to Season 7?
Let's
Fair enough.
The camera is now at the POV of the casket of Season 6. The shovel comes down, the dirt covers the camera, fade to black. Season 7!
Wow, that was very cinematic. So in Season 7, we have this great motif, a couple of different great motifs coming on. First of all, Fitz is lost to the universe. Nobody knows where he is for sure, except one person, and Enoch, the Chronicon.
And even she doesn't know.
She doesn't really know. And then the Chronicons are they're basically trying to obliterate humanity because they think they're better. And then in order to try to stop all of this, we have our S.H.I.E.L.D. agents traveling through time, trying to preserve a timeline that had already veered kind of at the beginning of the season, end of the last season. And it's just all this timey-wimey stuff, as the Whovians, like myself, say. So what did we think of Season 7? What did we like? What didn't we like?
My only big complaint, because like I said, I overall really, really enjoyed the last season because I was ready for it. My only big complaint with the plot of it is I didn't know what about Earth the Chronicons would want to preserve that had been developed up until S.H.I.E.L.D.'s timeline. Because for me, if we're gonna make this planet our new home planet, but first we gotta get rid of these guys who will definitely beat us up if we try to do that. I'm gonna go back to when the first fish crawled out of the primordial ooze, and I'm gonna shoot it with my robot gun. I'm not gonna try to systematically pinpoint all of the things that made S.H.I.E.L.D. happen and get rid of those. Like, what were they trying to keep? Did they just really like Michael Jackson music? Was there
Which they should.
Downton Abbey? Like, what? I didn't get why they were like, okay, you want to get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why are you trying to keep everything else? This is not the most efficient way for a time-traveling villainy thing to go down, but that's
So you're going the Don Cheadle and Infinity Wars when they were just like, why don't we just, strangle baby Thanos? Here's the thing, why don't they just cut the head off right at the beginning?
Yeah, and an epiphany that I've had, because everyone talks about the, with time travel question, and what, you gonna go back, you gonna kill baby Hitler? You could just move him. You could just kidnap baby Hitler and drop him in San Francisco, and he'll probably get the art career that he wanted in the first place. You could have just moved baby Thanos. You could just take, I forget who the original head of S.H.I.E.L.D. was. Just go back to when they were a kid and move them to a different part of the country. It's not like they were destined, I will be a secret agent. Year 3, I don't care, I will be. No. They're gonna, that's the thing with the time travel thing, there's so many different ways you can go about it. I would have liked a little bit of an explanation as to why, it's maybe this is a fixed point in time, and we literally can't undo S.H.I.E.L.D. except up until this point. This is the first opportunity we have to mess with that. That I would have kind of accepted. I don't think there was any moment like that. It was just kind of we'll accept this. But to counter that with some praise, I did like their explanation of the time jumps and how those were working, of how the Zephyr was it's mirroring their jumps. So they jump, we jump after them. That I did think was more plausible as to why we're gonna pit stop in all the cool decades.
Are the Chronicoms in the comics?
Not in anything that I've read.
Whole lot of robo races, just in general. That's any sci-fi universe, but not the Chronicoms specifically that I know about.
Because that was my...
They might be more of a Guardians thing or just an Eternal thing, but they're not in any of the main storylines for Avengers.
That actually explains a lot, because in echoing your point, Micah, that was my number one question. Who are they, and why do they care so much about all of this? Because I don't feel like they developed that well coming out of Season 6 into Season 7, and even though it was the motif that gave us the time travel... They were the most tedious part of the season for me. All of the different, I'm going to build myself into a robot now because I'm trying so hard to make this happen. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? You're just hell-bent on, you're just an evil robot with really smart language and famous voices. I just don't understand the Chronicoms, but I still enjoyed the gimmick of them jumping through the different time periods and everything that came with that. I was thrilled when Enver Jokic came in. What is his name? Daniel Souza came in. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, it's we come from two different camps. You're the IMDb camp. I'm the just what happens on the screen camp. There are many names, people that I should know their names, and I still to this day do not. I apologize to all those people.
Enver was previously on Dollhouse, so he is a Whedon actor. He's one of the company that travels, and he was, of course, Daniel Souza on Marvel's Agent Carter, which I watched both seasons of. That's one I would revive in answer to your question, because that ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm mad. So, but yes, I loved when he came through.
They talked up the Agent of Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. crossover, and everything that I remember reading, they really hyped up, oh my god, Peggy Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then I was just kind of y'all made it sound like it was going to be the entire season with them with her doing stuff, and it wasn't. We had them at the beginning, and that was great. I enjoyed it. I was just they hyped it up way more because they knew that people loved Peggy Carter and they loved the show, which why it got canceled. ABC just doesn't know how to handle stuff. And they were just oh yeah, by the way, not really. Gotcha though, you already watched all the episodes.
I did like Gemma impersonating Peggy Carter, though. I thought that. There's no internet back then. She's got authorization passes and a British accent. That's all they really need. And then Sousa is just I always like it better when the person doesn't call them out in front of everybody first. I like it when, like, there's the moment of them realizing they've been found out and the person being like, you and me are going to have a conversation. And then they have the conversation, but it's still all secrets.
That was one of my favorite episodes this season, was that whole sequence with Gemma actually turning, because I was all thrilled. I was like, is Haley Atwell? Did they get her back? And then no, it wasn't, but it was funny. So
that episode.
I enjoyed the black. Oh, I was gonna say I enjoyed the black and white, the noir episode more than I thought I was. Not saying that it was a bad episode, but I was just like, oh great, we're gonna have that slow pace noir. Everyone's talking like this from like. But no, they did. One more word from you, and I'm gonna bust your lip there, kiddo. It was just like
Cracker Jack. They would just say Cracker Jack. No racing back in this one.
But yeah, I loved the little twist at the end with how they got around him dying. I thought that was like really well crafted. Usually when there's a film noir-esque type episode of shows that I enjoy, is like, okay, now everyone's just gonna talk like they're from New York, and none of it makes sense. There's some dame. There's always a dame.
Always a dame. Speaking of the shooting thing for Sousa's death, I think they made the best use of Coulson being a robot for as long as he was. It wasn't something, like, usually sometimes they'll just, like, dodge around that or something, but no, it was, like, every time that it made logical sense, it's like, I can do it, I'm a robot! I'm existentially crisis about being a robot, but I understand that I am a robot. So if someone needs to get shot into the pool, once again, he's a secret agent, there's no internet. If they find a guy in the pool with Sousa's thing, they'll assume it's Sousa. You guys can pick me up from the morgue later, I'll be fine, because I'm a robot. I think they handled that well, and they've honestly done a pretty good job of that throughout the series as far as, like, with his hand. With his robot hand, they would find different ways to, like, make that interesting or relevant and not just a robot hand. I will say they kind of, like, super erased Yo-Yo's robot hands, which I understand from a perspective standpoint, you don't want to CGI all that all the time, but it also made sense. Like, we've seen the technology for human robot hands before. I don't understand why she has, like, these Mortal Kombat Jack's arms do look cool, but at a certain point, she needs to be able to, like, go get dinner at places and stuff.
Well,
and not look like a monster.
I also liked the juxtaposition of the two characters and how each of them dealt with it differently, because Yo-Yo was such a late stage addition to the cast. Of course, now she's one of the ensemble, one of the fam, if you will, and I don't know that they've given her much more emotional stuff to wrestle with beyond her relationship with Max. So when she had the two arms and she had to kind of figure out what that looked like for herself for a while, and then faced with the idea that she didn't have to have them, and it gave her a lot of dimension and emotion that she wasn't probably given previously, and that was also different from how Coulson was playing that story. Also, I like the fact that in Coulson as LMD, they got to bring back the Coulson that we love, but he had a spin, a twist on his character, which was existential, and he had to figure out what life as somebody who looks like this guy but isn't really this guy is like. And I thought Clark Gregg did a fabulous job playing the nuances. Like, I believed he wasn't really Coulson, but he was there to play the character if he had to.
And he was
Bill
also
Coulson is the Harrison Wells of this universe.
He is the Harrison Wells.
Clark and Kavanaugh need to just have, like, a meeting.
I would
like
pay money to watch that show. Make it happen.
The Rehashers.
The Council of Wells meets the Council of Coulson. Anyway, continue.
The Coulsons would have so much fun frustrating the Wells.
Just touching each other.
But no, I think, and this is not a joke about him being a robot, he was a shinier Phil Coulson. It's like, the memories were there, but it wasn't really, there you go. It's hard having the brain that I have where my brain point out puns in what I'm gonna say before I say them. So I gotta be like, somebody else is gonna do that, and I don't want them to be like, shiny! So I have to preface the pun with, no, it's not a pun. But he was a lot more similar. Yes.
What a Scrooge.
I am an enemy fun fun is for the weak. No, I'm Sarge, and the rest of you are just Coulsons. He was a lot more similar to the early season Coulsons than season 5. That was the end stage Coulson. Quite literally, he was the most dramatic he had been because he was grappling with his impending death. Like, the nature is finally getting rebalanced. You are going to die, and also all the things they'd been through. This was more like we took all of that Coulson's memories and put them into the same, like, he's still wearing, like, all the prim suits. It was just very factory fresh. Once again, I'm not trying to make these jokes, but it was like a factory reset on Coulson's character. He was a lot more, I think, light than he had been especially since Sarge, but more so even than when he was still Coulson before he passed away. It was a nice way to find a new role for him. Sure, beta test Coulson is what we'll call him, because we did that. That's another, harkening back to what we were talking about with season 6 and the new dynamic. Now we have director Mac being, at least until he had a crisis and needed Deke to rescue him in a great episode that we'll talk about. He was the director. Like, he now had this new dynamic, so we're like, how do we keep Coulson on the show without him being, he's like, Mac is now the Coulson of the show, so how do we get Phil back on here in a role that's original for him? And I think they found a decent way to do that.
Agreed. I had a thought and it just went away. Oh, I remember. One of my favorite episodes of the season, other than the one in the 40s with all of the Agent Carter double play, was, and even though it's such a rehashed concept for comic book shows, was the Groundhog Day episode where they were getting closer and closer and closer to not existing, and they had a whole basically comedy of errors farce going on with the cast, where it was a very serious situation and they had to save their lives, but there was a whole sequence about Daisy and Coulson just trying to figure out what they remembered from the last iteration before the ship blew up, and I loved that so much that because it was basically mid-series Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ensemble all thrown together again, minus Fitz. I did miss Fitz this entire season. This season he did have schedule conflicts. I looked it up, and so they could only fit him in the last 2 or 3, and I missed his presence. But it made up for it a little bit in the episodes like the Groundhog Day episode where they just played to their strengths and their chemistry. But we can talk about your Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Noah.
Oh, no. I was gonna agree with you. I really enjoyed the Groundhog Day episode. It was definitely like in my top 2. The top 1 being, of course, the episode that I talked about, and Micah got upset, even though I do agree that it is a great episode. There's just moments no, what I was going to say is one thing that this season, it's not my favorite episode, but a scene that I enjoyed was, in fact, the fight on the plane. Well, the suspense leading up to the fight on the plane, Mac's parents.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that the intensity, because, I mean, there was always that inkling in the back of your mind, like, okay, like, it could be possible that they're a part of, like, they've already been taken over and stuff like that, and then there's that beautiful part where May is like, I didn't feel anything. And you're just like, oh, here it comes. And then they have this beautiful, prolonged fight. And then he realizes that he has to do it to his own mom. And, like, he has to look in his mother's face and do what he has to do. And even though the episode was just kind of like the episode, it was just kind of there for me. But that scene, like, the whole sequence of events, it was just one of the best moments. And it was very much Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to the core by having beautiful action scenes, but at the heart of it, having this really emotional moment in which someone has to deal with something and has to overcome it. It reminded me of old school when Daisy first got her powers, and there was always these moments where she had to do it, and then her arm would hurt, or she would, like, break a bone, but she would still it was superhero-esque at the bare root where it was like someone overcoming odds, and it just reminded me why I loved the show so much, just in that little scene.
So, Micah, you froze a minute, but what Noah was saying was that he agreed with me that the Groundhog episode was in his top 2 episodes of the season, being number 2. His first favorite one, which you gave him crap about because he said that he had some flawed moments in it, was the Mac Deke buddy cop one in the 80s.
I also think that was probably my favorite one, but the Groundhog Day one I would also say is number 2. That was, I do have a factoid from the production side of things. That was Elizabeth Henstridge's directorial debut for the show, was directing that episode, which, like, way to jump in on a meaty one, freaking having to do time loops. That episode, honestly, like, at this point, I don't even think the Groundhog Day thing is a trope so much as it is just, it's a rite of passage for a lot of, like, sci-fi shows. It's just... It's everybody does it at this point, so it's like, how will you do it and make it original but also make it work? I think the thing of, like, we're approaching ourselves in time, and if we hit them, like, everything's gone. Like, that made sense to me as to why the loops were happening and why they were getting shorter. I think the way they had for monitoring how short it was getting was well done as well. But yeah, no, the comedy in that episode was just great. Because, like, all we see for Daisy and Robot Coulson is they whoop butt all the time, whooping butt, and then just be like, all right, well, let's try it this way. And then they're flying into boxes because Enoch has apparently whipped out some hop keto extra skills. There's so many things I want to talk about. This is the opposite of season 6. There's a billion things I want to talk about for this season. One of which is Enoch is the MVP. I was aware of him every single second while he had been left behind. Every episode, all I was focusing on was, how are you going to get him back? He is the goodest boy. He is the wonderful pet mascot for this team at this point. You have left him. You have left him in the 40s. He had to go through the 50s. He's like a progressive robot. He probably wanted to be friends with a lot of people he wasn't allowed to be friends with during those times. He had to wait till the 70s and everything was cool again. Like, I felt so bad for him the entire time that he wasn't on the show, and then they got him back. And I was like, cool. And then they kill him. And, like, it was for a good cause. It was to save all of space-time, which is generally a good reason to do that. But no, I'm glad he got to play around a little bit in that last season, specifically in that episode. The other thing that you mentioned you were talking about, I don't know what I was about to call him, Mac's parents, was May and the emotionless empathy thing. I actually liked that device quite a bit throughout the season.
And that was the whole reason that she couldn't really connect. I thought that was a beautiful way for her figuring out why she couldn't like this Coulson. It was because she couldn't feel anything for him, because there was this whole disconnect. And I thought that was because, you know, she loved the face of Coulson and the memories of Coulson, but it wasn't her Coulson. But the fact that she didn't have empathy towards him because he had no empathy himself, I thought that was a beautiful way of really sticking the fact of, like, yeah, he isn't her Coulson. This isn't the Coulson we all know or she knew. This is a Coulson we can like, but she's never going to feel the same way. But I thought that was beautifully done.
It was a good parallel as well, because she is a human person who could not feel any emotions. He was a constructed life form who was feeling a lot of emotions all the time and wondering how he was supposed to feel about his own feelings. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. May and Coulson, they got their happy ending off screen at the end of season 5. I was always satisfied with the end of their ship arc in that, is that to the last of his days, they got to be together, like, truly. No job in the way, none of that. They just got to be people. So I wasn't too attached, like, oh, how are we going to get them to have their big happy ending? They had theirs. I will say the Groundhog Day episode was, I saw the Sousa Daisy ship coming, like, way out to port. I saw it on the horizon with my pirate telescope, but still, I was like, okay, how are we gonna make this feasible writing wise so that it's not super rushed, especially with him being Mr. Leave It to Beaver, super straight laced,
who had a big crush on Peggy, by the way, except she was devoted to Steve.
It's just a string of broken hearts. The entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a lot of people in love with a lot of people who are waiting for other people.
This is true.
But,
and then at the end of it, Captain America gets what he wants. This is some bullshit.
I mean, I had arguments with people about how the Captain America thing worked with his final scene in Endgame, and we can talk about it after the podcast. But no, with the Sousa Daisy ship, I do think the Groundhog Day episode was a very efficient way to kind of get her up to a point where she like okay, now she understands the way that, like, his love language that he's showing is that he's supporting her, just, like, without question. He's like, yeah, let's go. Like, what are we doing? Who are we getting today? And I think that helps kind of get them to, like, a nice place by the end of it without having to, you know, they only had 13 episodes. You got to do what you can.
Plus, I love the chemistry of those two, and I also loved how some of my favorite moments were Mac encouraging the relationship on and sort of eavesdropping on their stilted little conversation and flirting and laughing to himself.
He was from a different generation than Daisy, so there are some aspects of, like, straight-laced guy flirting that she, as a millennial, might not necessarily pick up on. But, like, once he saw, like, his parents being in love, too, so he was like, hey, I see what you're I'm just flying the plane.
I was going to say, Mac was that old black dad where he just, like, looks and he's like, all right, then, boys. All right. You get it.
But at the same time, I have a shotgun axe. So you be respectful. And he was. Philip Sousa makes Steve look like Tony in terms of being a Boy Scout. Yeah, no, that was I
don't want to go that far.
Well, especially if we're looking at Endgame, Tony and Steve, I have a whole theory about how they, like, the main thing that happened in the Adventures was them rubbing off on each other and flipping. One thing we'll talk about after unless you want to have an Endgame podcast. But
that would go on forever.
I was surprised by that ship in terms of how well it did work. And especially if you're going to say, we're going to bring in a new love interest for the last season, and it's going to have to work out and feel fitting in 13 episodes. Like, that's a big order, and they got the guy. They got the guy for the job, and he did the job, and he and Chloe Bennett had great chemistry. And I think part of that was because it was a different kind of chemistry. They were coming from two very different places as people, rather than, like, Lincoln, who was just, like, he was same age as Daisy, also an Inhuman, a lot of the similar experiences. This was more of a opposites attract.
Yeah, exactly.
And we already had kind of a, like, if you even pay attention or you follow the MCU, which I feel like if you watch Agents of the S.H.I.E.L.D., you at least dabbled in Peggy Carter, so you saw him before. It wasn't like they literally just brought in this shiny new toy and was like, all right, she's going to fall in love with him. It was like, hey, like, here's the collector's edition. We found them. Appreciate them.
And probably made Peggy Carter people happy who had been supporting the him and Peggy ship and knew that was never going to happen, and then get the final nail in that coffin when Steve does what he does in Endgame. They were like, well, fine, I guess Sousa just dies alone and unhappy. And they're like, no.
I mean,
from time.
Back when Agent Carter was on, I didn't know what her prospects were with old Captain America, so I was part of that ship. I was like, just look his way. He's so nice. He's chivalrous.
He did get married.
She did get married. Not to him, though.
Insult to injury, too. Don't worry, there is someone else for me besides the most perfect human being that's ever been literally made. But it's not true.
It's not you.
That's the thing. We don't know. That's if we are reconnecting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to the MCU timeline. We don't know when this happened. We don't know when Steve. Maybe, like, as soon, like, Sousa dies and Peggy's like, oh no, and then the next day Steve pops up like, dance time? It could have all meshed together. Plus now we got the Loki series, which is going to happen in that timeline, that's another, like, I'm not getting into it, but there are 4 timelines.
That's for the Loki podcast, which has already been seated. So
not surprising. Hiddleston knows how to fill seats.
Well, yeah.
Can't fault them for that.
Plus, I've got a cadre of people that saw the Disney Plus announcement for Marvel and Star Wars and were like, all the shows! I want all the shows!
I will say, like, Disney's like, geez, slow it down. You could have spread that and all those announcements out over 3 different announcement events. They were just like, coming in 2021, every show that you could possibly conceive, it will be.
And now DC's like, oh shit, yeah, us too. We're doing the same thing,
except now.
DC needs to put out, and this is a very big step away from everything that we're talking about for this actual podcast, they need to put out another animated film and have it be a theater debut. And not like the way they did The Killing Joke, which I've only heard bad things about its adaptation.
It wasn't great.
To this day, Marvel can't even see. Okay, Marvel is Sam the Falcon Wilson and DC is Captain America when it comes to making animated movies, like 2D, hand-drawn style. They've never stopped. They keep putting them out, and they've gotten really, really good and really, really adult as well as they've gone by.
Yeah.
So that's, honestly, if DC is going to, like, bow out of the movie game, that's my recommendation for them. Or, if they want to pick up on some way that Marvel failed, link the movies with the TV show and have it, like, commit to it this time.
I have a theory. I have a theory about that, which would work well. But, you know, that is a different podcast. That is a different time. We are on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I got us off track. But, let's talk about the favorite episode.
I love self-aware panelists.
Let's talk about the favorite episode, which also I'd be surprised if it isn't Kylie's favorite episode, because it's the 80s episode. Ding, 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 intro.
I liked it a lot.
Drum machines.
I did like it a lot. I think I felt more emotionally attached to the Groundhog Day episode, but I like where the 80s episode got to. And I know I'm supposed to laugh at the fact that Deke was releasing songs in his cover band before they were ever even in existence, but
with the wrong lyrics.
With the wrong lyrics. But then I just kept wondering to myself, so did Simple Minds hear your version of Don't You Forget About Me? Or did they write their own version? Now, fortunately, they resolved the timeline question, so I don't need to really, like, spend much more time on that. But that's how I was reacting at the time in the episode.
I liked his band members turned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like,
I did enjoy that as well.
I'd watch some webisodes of their exploits as S.H.I.E.L.D.
And the twins were part of the startup company, weren't they?
I think so. Yeah.
They were part of his R&D team, yeah. So there was more little Easter eggs of previous seasons, and it did give Deke more of a reason to be endearing as opposed to just simply the obnoxious puppy dog or whatever you called him.
It took him from a puppy dog to being a puppy man. He was still very much like Golden Retriever, but in like a purposeful way. Like, Mac was the one spiraling into sadness, and Deke was always there like, hey, buddy,
Micah,
let's go for a walk. Let's get out of the house. Please get out of the house.
Micah, I think Puppy Man is just dog.
Potato. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that on...
Puppy Man.
I probably shouldn't make that comparison on Couch Potatoes Unite.
It does make us sound very hoity-toity.
We only watch Downton Abbey here on Couch Potatoes.
Oh, we missed an opportunity in our Downton Abbey panel.
Couch Potatoes Unite, UK.
Do it for Bridgerton whenever you decide to do that.
Fair enough.
Man.
I'll remember that.
People are blowing up about that. I'm just not interested. But it's not.
That's for the Bridgerton podcast.
We're getting so scattered. It's like we're season 6 up in here. But
he intended that joke, listener.
Speaking of nostalgia throwbacks for the season, we got our last Patton Oswalt Koenig, and technically the first Koenig.
The first Koenig.
The original Koenig, who apparently has the strongest bloodline in all of human genetics. Came back after 80 years and became these identical triplets.
They're in the comics. They're legit characters in the comics. Yeah, them and Dum Dum Dugan are like the genetics of gods. You look exactly like your grandfather. Exactly. No question.
I'm still very angry that neither Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Marvel movies brought in Dum Dum Dugan again, because I liked the actor that they cast for him. I don't know his name, but he played Damien Darhk in Arrow.
Neil McDonough.
Yeah, he was Dum Dum Dugan as part of the... What are they called? The Howling Commandos? Yeah, he was one of those guys, and it is in the canon of the comics that his grandson looks exactly like him, so they could easily recast this man to be in the current movies or in one of the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it would have made sense, but...
Hey, he could be a Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
That's true. We don't know, because there has been a little bit more negotiating between both on the part of Marvel and DC of like connecting TV shows, because I think they're seeing that these aren't just like TVs in the little screen. Back. No, he's that's a different podcast. You guys covered that. His goodbye was nice.
Technically, we have not done the Legends one yet, but I did watch it, so you're lucky.
Sorry for spoilers that we didn't even alert you with our spoiler alert.
You're fortunate I've watched it.
Since we're already here, Snape kills Dumbledore. Vader is Luke's father. Rosebud is a slut.
I don't think those are on the par of the Damien Dark.
I would hope so. It takes place 30, 40 years after Karate Kid. He should be. No, every time we do any of these podcasts for any of the shows that I'm on, we always manage to just talk around extremely important facet of the season. And it's not that we didn't like it. It was just we're talking about other things. The Maliks, kind of a big deal. Let's talk about them for a bit. Who do we like? Do we like Freddy better than the son from Out of Time who wasn't supposed to exist but then did exist and he became a big person? How do we like his arc with the stealing of the Inhuman powers?
I forgot.
I didn't really like it.
I was gonna say that silence there kind of clued me in. Maybe not a big fan.
That was a tedious portion of the season as well. Although I will say that the final fight between him and Daisy Quake, as I call her, was fun because we got to see her go full-on Quake, which they hadn't done for a very long time since she blew the planet apart, apparently, allegedly, in the season 5. So,
this has been unproven. My client was acquitted.
All I'm saying is that's the last time they used the major CGI effects on her most Quakeness of Quake. And I thought that was a really good last fight to kind of throw in there.
And it did make a little bit of sense after he had stolen. I was like, dude, you're really going to step to Quake? And then he was like, hey, there's been a time jump. I've had these powers longer than you. I was like, well, that's good writing, isn't it? Well done. Well done. Put him on equal footing.
I will say that he did help kind of really start the relationship between Sosa and Daisy because of the torturing. So I will give him that for being a plot point to kind of get the relationship off the ground. Because you see someone get tortured for you, you fall in love with them. That's just law.
Yeah, there are a lot of bylaws that are like, hey, this isn't worth at least 30 love points. Come on, give the man some props. Yeah, no, I liked the in the 40s stuff, which I think they were good episodes and not as as a lot of 40s things will be in other shows. I did like who they got to play young Wilfred Malik. He reminded me a decent amount of Grant Ward. Just enough to kind of be reminiscent in terms of these are both Hydra guys type deal. But man, oh man, the dude they found to be young, I can't even, young Bill Paxton. I was like, holy, did you pluck him out of time? Because what is that his real son? Where did you find this man? Because that looked exactly like him. I liked him having the powers better than I don't even remember the guy's name. The Inhuman with no eyes who can do the teleporting thing.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't.
He was always a weird character to me. He felt like he was.
I'm just looking up his name.
I keep thinking Lash, but I know that was the husband.
Yeah, that was a very, very different character.
I know.
They were introduced same season though, so credit to you for that. Yeah, no, he was another. I think he came in the 80s episode or close to it, and it felt, I don't know. He kind of helped keep the villain side feeling a little not too gloom and doomy because it had to get there at a certain point, but he livened up the villains ensemble, which isn't something we usually get a lot of in general, but in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. there really hasn't been a lot of, there's the good camp and the bad camp, and we're going to actually give some, time to the bad camp for them to have their own, group dynamic. It's just a lot of people going, yeah, evil.
Yeah, they don't have charisma to them. They're just pretty much just bad for bad's sake.
Especially the Chronicons. Because, it's not your fault. You literally don't have charisma. You are not programmed with charisma. But
I don't remember the Inhuman that you're talking about, and he didn't make it by name into my talking points. However, I feel we should spend some time on the revisit to the temple, the return of Jiang. Gordon. Yes, Gordon. The return of Jiang, played by Dyken Lockman, also a dollhouse transplant and Whedon regular, who was Daisy's mom, Jiang, and the secret half-sister, Cora. What did you think about that development?
Yes. You see, there's just big major stuff. It just slips through the cracks when we're talking about this stuff. I disliked Cora at the beginning because it was a very tropey thing of like, I don't know how I feel about like this woman who's dealt with Inhumans for untold eons. We don't know how old she is truly. Couldn't figure out a way to get her own daughter to come to grips with her powers. But, hey, I'm a bad guy, and you know what? I don't care. She's like, well, shoot, now I won't explode and kill myself. That seemed a little cliche. It was like, oh, the villain showed up right at the right moment and knew the magical words to unlock their that seemed a little dicey. I liked where she ended up, like at the end of her arc, but I would say it was probably a precipitous dropping arc where it like stayed low and then it just went up really quick. So I was not a huge fan of Cora for most of that.
I was not a fan of it.
Yeah, same. It wasn't anything really spectacular. Michael pretty much nailed it on the head in the fact of like, I do hate when bad guys kind of like come in during like a person's like moment and they're just like, hey, do this. A hero needs like a full-on speech and tears and crying and a broken arm, and still they're going to say no, but maybe the power of friendship will bring them around. Villain can be like, I don't like you, and they'll be like, I'll do anything you ask me to.
Or any iteration of the phrase, I'm bad and it feels good. Back in all writers, especially if there are any burgeoning writers listening to this, take that and you dig up, you exhume the casket of season 6 that we buried earlier in this episode. And you open it, and you go, oh God, the smell. And you throw that writing device in the casket, you nail it back shut with even more nails than before, and you rebury it. We don't need any more people saying being bad feels good. It's lazy. I didn't need it from, like, okay, at least his dad ran Hydra. He's got some backstory to be a bad person. There was at least that. She was just like, I'm a teenager, and I can explode. So... nah, like that was really all she had starting out, and then they eventually made her a person, which is always a good thing to do. Another tip for you writers: make everybody that you write a person. It works well.
Unless they're robots, then you don't really have to.
Well, no, because even Enoch, like by the end there,
you don't have to though.
He kind of became a real boy, and you know.
Well, and what I think I struggled with that half-sister storyline, I didn't really love the actress in the role. I thought she was kind of not great. But then also, all of this occurred in the alternate timeline, but then they yanked her into the timeline that they actually are supposed to be in. And that's where it ended the story. And aren't you just screwing up the timeline again? Is my question.
From what I could understand, which wasn't a lot, because time travel is a big woof every time anybody does it, was that the future that they would be returning to, quote-unquote, was essentially unmoored. I think they were following the Infinity War, or the Endgame thing of it, which was, like, timelines essentially are the same as parallel realities. And, like, different eventualities in a timeline will create a full and new thing. So not everything will echo forward, rather than, like, they didn't take Cora from behind them, they took her from behind and to the side. And pulled her out of that timeline into their new one, rather than just being farther along on the same line.
Right,
Once
like
again,
what the ancient one was saying. What the ancient one was saying with the Infinity Stones, like when you pluck one, as long as you return it, if you don't, then it creates a whole separate thing. What they did is they took an Infinity Stone, Cora, and they just let that universe just crumble.
Well, I think that one had already diverged because of Malik not dying, or the son not dying. So I think technically they took her from a, no offense to everybody that lived in that timeline, a throwaway timeline. It's like, you guys already aren't in our canon, so we can just pretty much take anybody we want. Susa, get in here. Cora, hop on the boat. Everybody.
Steve Rogers did that.
Everybody rise.
It was a little too late for that revelation, I guess, and
fair.
It might have hit better if, again, maybe this 13 episode was the 26 episode last 2 seasons, as opposed to, we're trying to throw everything at the wall right now because we want to give you a really good ending, but here's a secret family storyline because it's a sci-fi superhero show. Secret family in the last 3 episodes.
As far as I understood it, is like fitting into Daisy's actual past. Like, Cora did exist.
She did.
They didn't save her, and she blew herself up. And
correct.
Johnny just didn't mention her, probably because you're like, my daughter blew up. Not my best mommy moment.
Well,
don't really,
and
I don't
she'd
really put
already-
that one out
Where
there.
is she going?
Well, and
Where
she
isn't
didn't-
she is the better question.
Right, she wasn't a mom to Daisy when she was Sky either. Sky was an orphan, never knew mom until she found her at the temple. That was the whole story. So all of that made kind of bit of sense, but it's something they could have built up more, and they could have had Dyken Lockman on longer, because I like her, and there could have been more, like, earning of that emotional beat, which by the time they landed with, okay, I accept you're my sister and I'm plucking you from this quote-unquote throwaway timeline so we can be family, I was like, shrug?
Girl, you have a family.
Right?
I thought this...
You're cheating on your actual family!
The biggest plot hole for me with Jia Ying was that he just, like, broke her neck and that was it. Like, her whole ability is that she doesn't die.
Right.
Yeah, she came back from being tortured by Whitehall for a long time, like decades of torture, until he figured out how to become, which, honestly, that's just a testament to, I can't remember the young Malik's name, but he's pretty smart. He duplicated in a human's powers and, like...
I'll look it up and throw it in the Rich post. I did look this up when I was watching it, but I can't remember right now.
It wasn't
I hate
Gideon.
when they do that. With, like, they did it with Darwin, too, where they just kill characters whose only ability
Their whole
is
thing is
to
that this
not
wouldn't
die.
work. Yeah.
Like, that's how strong they are. They can kill the unkillable. Then they're not unkillable, thus making them not that strong.
Which,
the Darwin thing,
again,
it's a whole other headache.
maybe this is a rule of our broken timeline. I don't know, but they didn't have enough time to explain that, so I agree. That really made me mad. Because A, I like her. Again, I like her. And B, they were really just trying to get rid of her to get her out of the way so that all this other stuff could blossom. It was way too late for all this.
And to give depth so that Daisy could be like, oh, well, guess what? Your boyfriend killed your mom. And she'd be like, now I'm thinking about switching scenes again.
Right, exactly. That's same old chestnut.
But jumping from your you have a family outburst to the actual finale of the show,
Sure.
surprisingly
Nice segue.
sad finale.
Yes.
Like, I respect them for doing it, because not a lot of people, like, everybody wants to end on Sunshine and Rainbows, but that one was like that's what happened. Time goes on, people go separate ways, even these people, and, like, there's you could pull a lesson from that if you want, like, hey, even if you've become distant with someone, like, you're still that family that did all that stuff back then, but still, I was just like, man, virtual meeting? Like, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 people entering the room before I figured out, like, oh, they're not actually there. I thought it was framework at first, but it was the hologram thing, which makes more sense. That's something else that we'd seen kind of with the Avengers movies. In Endgame, we saw the hologram council thing. But yeah, no, it was maybe a little sad. And some of them went back out to space. They were like, yeah, nah, we loved the space part. We loved that part of season 6. Everybody didn't like it too bad, because that's where we are for the rest of our lives, as far as you know.
Yeah, that knowing that some of them went back out to space, I was just like, really? Is this a spin-off waiting to happen? Is this what you guys are trying? Because it's not going anywhere. No one's going to remember that you went out there.
Plus, they, like, all went to different directions. That's a lot of things to keep track of. If it was like a half and half thing, where it's like, well, we're going to keep being shields, like, well, a couple of us were heading into space. Everybody was doing different stuff.
Well,
which is very strange, because you would think that, yeah, they all went their separate ways. But even in stories like that, where they're like, and then me and my friends, we all kind of went, you keep, like, 2 or 3 of you still, like, clumped together and still hang out or are close enough, but they all went, like, separate ass-ways. Oh, no, 2 of them went up to space together.
Yeah, 2 of them did.
Daisy, Sousa, and Cora
Yeah.
went to space.
Fitz and Simmons have a daughter now.
They do.
Yeah.
That was, oh man, the whole unraveling of that last knot with the Simmons and Fitz bottle episode, excellent.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I loved it.
It was a big
Because
task.
I love them. So, to that end, I actually loved the ending. It is a little sad, but I do think there is a lot of meaning and heft in it. And I like how they kind of talked about it in terms of a high school reunion. It's all meaningful because they all went through it together, but ultimately they do have their own lives. And, you know, Fitz and Simmons have this kid. Are they going to raise the kid in space? I wouldn't recommend that. You know, stuff like that. Melinda taking the job at Becoming a teacher at the Shield Academy that's named after Coulson.
See, now I will watch a Shield Academy show where it's like mostly about the cadets, but with some guest appearances and maybe Ming-Na Wen as like the teacher, like the Aizawa of the classroom. If they make this show, I will watch this show, no questions asked. But yeah, it was kind of. I'm glad she at least like stayed in the fold. Although, what could you see her doing without Coulson in the world? Like if he in his human form had stayed alive, I could see them retiring together. But like without that, I think like
right,
she's in the job, she's in the life.
Mac and Yo-Yo are together, but still doing the Shield work. I mean, for me, it felt like they took the characters all to very organic, believable places. And even Deke staying in the timeline that was and kind of becoming part of that timeline. I felt that they, with the exception of Half-Sister going off into space with Daisy, I felt like they earned every single emotional beat with all of the ensemble. And since this show has really been about the characters, more so than other shows. Huh?
Didn't Deke, he became, like, he was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, in the timeline that he left, he was essentially taken over?
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good parallel just for his arc in general, because he was born and grew up in the Lighthouse, just in a horribly perverted iteration of it, and now he gets to establish his own past, essentially, almost. And once again, they got me to like him by that season, which is good, because his goodbye would have meant nothing to me if he hadn't. But no, that was a good. I forgot about that.
And to be fair, the little girl is his mother. You know that.
So weird.
Fitz and Simmons are his grandparents.
Exactly.
Which now I guess it helps that he is in another timeline, because he wouldn't exist. There's no way that having to have been stored in a super vault of time and memory or wherever she was to protect her from the Chronicoms would not affect the course of her life and the birth of Deke. And also, just in general, for time travel things, I watched About Time a little while ago. He makes a very good point. If you change anything about the conception of your children, even by a second, the odds of your child being the same child are they're just not possible. So yes, it's good that Deke got to a place where he can exist and continue to do so. Because technically, technically, Emma Simmons and Leopold Fitz do exist in that world. He'll just be able to watch over them and I have new recruitment letters to send out for these two specifically.
Is there anything you want to say about season 7 before I move into our looking back rundown?
No.
I don't think so.
All right, so now we're going to do the looking back questions, and we've covered some of this, so I'll keep it rapid fire and on point. How does that sound?
I will try to keep my answers rapid fire as well, as you can tell by even what I'm saying right now. I'm not the strong suit, but we'll do what we can.
He just sped up his entire vocal speed.
Or I'll just compress my normal answers into quick 5-second bites.
We've just turned your dial up on the turntable, and you're going,
listen to this part at half speed in order to understand.
How would you grade? Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can rank it with the star scale, which is CPU star scale. 5 stars being great, holy smokes, best show ever. 1 star being pass on this one, guys, not so great. Or you can grade it if you like letters and you're in school. How would you rank or grade Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now that all of it's done, and explain why you rank it that way or grade it that way?
I will go with a 3.5 out of 5. It starts off really, really strong. If you enjoy comics, if you love Marvel in general, the cinematic universe, otherwise, it's a great show. It does teeter off, but it at least ends on a really positive note. But those in-between seasons, you really gotta love the characters in order to continue. It's not like one where you can just be like, the characters are alright, but I like the story. You gotta love the characters. You have to, or you're not getting anywhere.
I would say baseline criteria of 3.5. I'll give it a bonus 0.5 for ensemble draw, because that's if you got a good crew, I can watch crap I can watch garbage writing, terrible plot lines. If I love the actors and their chemistry enough, that can get me through anything. So while I don't think, and that's like a personal taste, I think in general 3.5 is a fair grade for it. For me, it's a 4. I will say in my grading scale, there is more than just 4.5 and 5. It's probably 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. There's a lot of different criteria to get to that last little bit to earn a 5 for me. But yeah, I do think it, overall, it still does better than a lot of shows of a similar length of run. My introduction to the Couch Potatoes podcast was in Once Upon a Time. Honestly, I think just a bit Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. outperforms that show, just because like the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that were either slow or bad were not as slow or bad as the seasons of Once Upon a Time that were slow or bad. Like, oh, and you know what? It's a new podcast. People know me by now. The Frozen Ark ruined America. The Frozen Ark is why Trump was elected. No, we don't get political here.
Yeah, let's not go that far.
Unless your political party is you liked the Frozen Ark, then I'm very much against you. Yeah, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to pull off a good enough finale for 7 seasons is a weird spot. Usually 5 is where you want to jump off or you want to get it all the way up to 10. 7 is a frequent place that people have to end, but it's usually last legs, the whole cartoon image of a car that got hit by something and is now just a driver's seat and one wheel. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to pull into that finish line, nice, sleek, nice red finish, Coulson at the wheel, looking great. That's a
Coulson on a bicycle.
Shout out to Lola for those who didn't catch that.
Oh yeah, Lola.
The unsung hero of the show. She really. There were some episodes where it was her that saved the day. People don't even know. I floor those things.
I would also give it 3.5 stars. So we're unanimous. Well, aside from Micah's personal footnote.
That's just like bonus round type scoring.
On the star rating scale, 4 stars for me is it's intriguing, but there are pitfalls. 3 stars is there are things I like and things I don't. 3.5 stars is pretty much, there's way more things that I like than I don't. However, it is a flawed show. There are some pretty big flaws to it. 3.5 stars is also usually the minimum indicator of a star rating for a show that I will persevere with despite its flaws. And I think all of that is true of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. For me, the positives are all in the ensemble. The 7 actors or 6 actors or how many it is in and out that have come through the show, but particularly the final cast that we had. And for me, it's a zigzag. Season 1 did not start off well for those of us who are not as schooled on Marvel Comics. It got way better in the second half. Seasons 2 and 3 were on fire. Season 4 was pretty good. Season 5, I liked it. It was a big risk, but it was a divisive season. Season 6 was not very good at all. And then season 7 kind of rebounded into, we're satisfied with that place. So to me, that's a lot of unevenness, and 3.5 stars best represents what I'm seeing in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So then the next question is, which season was your favorite? Which season was your least favorite? I just answered that, but I will say more specifically that 3 was my favorite because that was the one where the Hydra arc tied off and it was all Hydra and Hive and that whole build-up, and then my least favorite was 6.
I wasn't expecting that question, which I don't know why. It seems pretty basic thing to expect for one of these. There were a lot of really great things long-term wise about the Hive season where like he was finally Hive. Oh man, and then there was the season with Gemma on the planet. Was that the same season or was that like a divide there?
There was a divide in that season. First half was her and the planet. Second half was they're back on Earth and he's become the embodiment of Hive.
That's a strong contender. I do think I kind of... Actually, no. If we're talking about just favorites...
I amend. I'm just going to amend because I forgot about 2 because 2 has all of the stuff in the temple and Jiang and everything and Daisy's backstory. So I'm going to tie 2 and 3 and then I'm going to put 6. Okay, go.
Shout out to Mr. Hyde who gets... He really just like, cool, plot device, he's gone, bye, Kyle, have fun doing Twin Peaks again. I hope he did. I'm gonna watch that reboot. I watched the original 2 seasons a little while ago.
Should be on the panel we're recruiting.
Project for people. If you want to dive into Twin Peaks, this is the time of your life where you'll be most receptive to the weirdness that's in there. I'm gonna go with season 4 I don't know how to split them up. Season 4 1.5, or the first half of season 4, with the Darkhold and all that, because the Darkhold leading into the framework got a little bit weird for me. I do think the framework arc when they were going into it was good, but honestly, Ghost Rider just really, really, really made that section pop for me. It's kind of like how my favorite thing for Once Upon a Time was the Peter Pan. It was mostly because of Peter Pan and Hook. Like, we had these really cool new characters. For this arc, we had, was Danny his name? The Ghost Rider, his civilian identity.
Yes, it was Danny.
Okay, yeah. We had Danny. We also had Ava, who I loved before she became like Skynet. Yeah, I think that one was probably my favorite. And it also, it came at a time, it came after the end of the Hive arc, which did feel kind of finalistic. So it had to have like a lot of new life into it, and it kind of made me like excited about the show again and excited to keep watching it for as long as that lasted until we got to season 6. Yeah, no, I'll say season 4, part 1.
So mine are pretty much, I guess, 1.5, or was it 2? Is it 2.1? Right after Winter Soldier happened. So the Fall of S.H.I.E.L.D.
So that's the second half of season 1.
Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
1
So
part
the
2.
Fall, right. So yeah, 1 part 2. Or Agents of Hydra. So when they're in the framework. I loved the change of fits. I loved Ava. I loved so much, and the connection that they found to bring Ghost Rider back into it, I thought was something that I didn't expect. And I will state this because we've already shit on season 6 so much. Season 6 is the stimulus package that we got, not what we deserve.
Topical. For those of you listening to this in the backlogs in the year 2027, yeah, we were really all, I don't know what the history books say, we're not happy about it. And yet I have friends who have received it already, and I'm like, all right, where's mine? I'm insulted, but I still want it.
Changing the subject!
I did think of one thing from season 7 that I forgot to mention that I thought was really, really good. Yo-Yo's dip back into her past and to why she always had to bounce back, and then overcoming that as a barrier. That was really cool.
Agreed.
That was really well done.
Do you think the series finale was a proper send-off? Why or why not?
It's possible for a show to have multiple series finales, even if they don't mean to, especially the Once Upon a Time crowd knows about this.
Oh my goodness.
I think that the
potential.
season...
Hashtag drink.
I think that the season 5 finale was better in terms of feeling complete and giving you the feelings you want to have for a send-off, but I do think that the actual series finale was very valid and it was done well. So yes, I liked it, but I don't think it was the best one that they did.
I agree with you, Mike, 100%.
Yeah, I think that the Coulson May ending that's just a staple of what should have been. Now, and what we got isn't bad by any means, but when you look at what we could have had or what we had, it's slightly not as good.
But it was also the send-off for technically a different dynamic, a different group who had only been together for 2 seasons.
Right, agreed. So that's unanimous. Do you think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would hold up with the passage of time? Why or why not? Was it time for it to go? Would you have watched more seasons, or should it have ended sooner? This is the $1 million looking back question, by the way.
I think it's going to, when you look back at the MCU in general, it's never really going to hold up compared to the story that we've seen. When you look at it by itself in its own merits, yeah, I think it's a good ABC show, it's a good TV show, it's a good sci-fi show, so I think it's going to hold up in that regard. Could it have continued longer? If Kevin Feige really cared about it, yeah, but he didn't. It was Joss Whedon's child. It was never in Kevin Feige's scope, and it never, I think that shows a lot, because it was seen as kind of a little plot, it used a plot device from Winter Soldier, and then after that, they were just like, all right, cool, be yourself, go on. It's like giving an 8-year-old car keys and being like, you're an adult now, good luck. Just having nothing to do with it.
I would say either Kevin Feige or Feige. Kevin. Good old Kevin F. Good old MCU Kevin. You know the one. Either him caring about it more or the ABC
network runner who we've voiced our opinions about on the Once Upon a Time podcast. So tune in for that tea. We're not big fans of hers. Is she still in that job?
I don't think so. I think they fired her.
I hope that she isn't destitute on the streets, but good. So yeah, no. Oh yeah, she's flush with cash. I think that the show could have gone longer if it hadn't have run into that snafu. A lot of it is knowing that you can write for longer that affects how you write the show. It was sci-fi, and technically it was new sci-fi because we haven't had Marvel Universe sci-fi before. There were a million things they could have done. We've seen them alternate characters in and out successfully. That could have been season 11 was nobody from the original show, and it could have still ended up being a good show. But that's something we didn't get to explore because of the circumstances. I will say a lot of the downfalls of this show, I think, which is not an excuse that a lot of other shows can use for having downfalls, I think a lot of them are external. I don't think there was that much of a problem in the writing room, definitely not in the cast room or who was directing. I think overall they had to adapt to a lot of things that other shows don't. And like I said, the MCU is something we've never seen before. Therefore, a TV show connected to a movie franchise in this way was also something we'd never seen before. So they were going into uncharted territory themselves just starting this show. So honestly, the fact that it was able to stay and keep at a 3.5 score from all of it, that's better than I think anyone would have expected. So yeah, here's the thing. If it was still going, I would still be watching it. As I've said, not really a issue of quality. I will watch many things just because I've already put too much time into them and say, well, I'm going to finish it now. That was a lot of Supernatural. And we didn't know when that thing was going to end. There were so many things we were like, all right, just give me to the next season. Maybe that'll be the last one. Maybe they'll announce it this time. And they never did. And then they finally did. And honestly, the show was able to hit a good stride in its last couple of seasons. I think that's something that would have been able to happen with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had they been able to, see the end coming a little bit sooner. Getting told that you have 2 more seasons left and that's it, that's a little bit more of a gift than only having the one, which is what a lot of shows get, if they get that at all. They might just, the cancellation bear comes and swipes everything away. But it also, I think, kind of cramped them in a little too much because they knew that this last season had to be really, really good. So now they're like, what do we write for this in-between season? Season 6, bad season, but also I think it was just a product of the circumstances they had to deal with rather than them not having the juice to keep giving us good S.H.I.E.L.D.
So while I would agree with you, Micah, that it was a sci-fi show, it was a novel Marvel show, a network Marvel show, not even a streaming channel Marvel show, which is where all the other Marvel shows are or are going to be. If they had continued making it, I would have continued watching it in whatever form. A, I'm a completionist, but B, this is just my kind of hybrid vehicle. Something with science fiction, something with superheroes, possibly, some with, some root in comic books, anything like that. I'm probably going to gravitate toward it. That being said, I think they should have ended after season 5. And the reason why I measure it that way is because I watched the formation, the undulation of this panel. It started off at 3, it got up to about 4 or 5, and then it went back to 3, and then it went to 2, and now we're at 3 by the grace of a Noah. So, and I think that's reflective of the viewing population at large. I think you had to be really devoted to be with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I think we all are, and I think the ensemble makes that easy and accessible for us to be that devoted. But from but from the story perspective, since you're talking about the 2 different season finales, season 5 felt like they didn't know they were going to come back for sure, and yes, they were given the 2 gifts, but it seems like they threw more of the emotional punch into the 5th season finale, and that would have been a perfect note to end on, but for the fact that Fitz was lost in space. That wouldn't have made me very happy, but there would have been so much gravitas to it that I felt we were stretching it out a little too far in the last 2 seasons. Not that I wasn't entertained, because I was.
I can agree with that, and I definitely think that if we hadn't lost Jen and Kristen before season 5, we would have lost them on season 6. They would have gone maybe 3 episodes and then been like, you know what, I got other things to do.
Exactly. And as for holding up with the passage of time, I don't know. I think it probably will, but I don't think you can watch it in the I just to piggyback on your point, Noah, I really don't think you can watch it in the context of the MCU. That was the hook, but if you're depending on that, then you are going to get more grumpy with it. And I didn't know enough about it to care about that initially, so I had a much easier time of it, probably, than somebody who knows Marvel in and out or had stayed current on the movies all the way up until the time of it starting and throughout. I mean, I caught up on all the movies eventually, but not in time with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so it didn't affect me as much. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I actually was, and I believe you as well, Noah, because we're all of our group of friends were going to the same movies at the same times. We were, like, current on, like, I think since Iron Man 2, I want to say. Well, no, that might have been just before. But, like, besides those 2 movies, like, every other Marvel movie, we were there and we saw it in order, but we also were watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think it is, you definitely do need to love it for what it is rather than loving it as an adjunct of the MCU, because it's not going to fulfill that role well, because it wasn't really given a lot to work with in that respect, but the reasons to like it for that are its own, I think, are substantial enough to get people to watch it in years to come.
Yeah. The way that I saw it and the way that I still see it is it would be like if the show Gotham started off the way that it did with introducing all these Arkham people, introducing all these Batman people, and then by like season 5, they're introducing people that have nothing to do with the storyline of Batman or anyone that's naturally in Gotham City. But because you've already watched it so long and you've enjoyed the little bits of Batman that you got, you stay. That's how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is. It's very much, if you enjoyed the MCU when you started, it's like, oh, cool, look at these Easter eggs. And then you grow to love the characters that are there, so that way, by the time you get to season 4, 5, and 6, you're like, okay, there's no more MCU, now it's just a sci-fi thing that has the word S.H.I.E.L.D. connected to it. Because, yeah, by the time you get to 4, 5, and 6, you can honestly tell someone this has nothing to do with Marvel, and they would believe you. It's like, okay, there's this thing called, especially by 5 and 6, because you're in space, it has nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything like that by the time of 5 and 6, and then by 7, people would be like, wait, does that have something to do with Marvel? What's a Peggy Carter? But, so, yeah, it's definitely, you have to really love Joss Whedon, and you just have to love ensemble sci-fi shows if you don't like Marvel. That's the only way I could tell someone who's like not a big fan of Marvel. They're like, but I really love shows about like sci-fi and people come together. Then I'd be like, yeah, go ahead, watch it. But if they're like, oh yeah, I really like Marvel and that's really all I like, you're gonna like the first 3 seasons.
Unless you really like Inhumans, which is a weird thing. If you're out there and you love Inhumans comics, power to you. Don't know how you do it. That's some dry.
How does it feel to like X-Men Rejects?
Yeah, X-Men Rejects. I don't even read the comics, but that's what I think.
If we had another 5 seasons on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I guarantee you they would have, like... And honestly, that's the thing. That's the thing that's so frustrating is because, yes, we now have this new universe to go into from a Disney's perspective because they've purchased Fox. They now own a lot more things that they can now do that they couldn't do before. They still can't do... I still don't know what they're doing with the Hulk thing, because Hulk, the specific movie rights of Hulk are owned by Universal, and only solo movies. It's such a weird one thing to own. It's like, I own this sidewalk square. You can walk on the rest of the sidewalk, but not on my square. There's a fence around it. Like, they didn't own Fox at the time. They could not say the word mutant, which is... Let's be honest, we all know why they went with Inhumans on that show. It's because they couldn't do mutants. I guarantee you, if the show had an open-ended, like, run time, we would have launched into that. I honestly think it would have been an easier way to now combine our post-Thanos MCU with this new world where mutants will exist. They're getting ready to do X-Men properties at Disney. They're going to do it. I think it'd be a lot easier to like set the groundwork for that with a show. I think that's what this show should have been used for. It should have been, this is what we're planning for Phase 3. We need to get some of this into the canon before that, because otherwise it's going to seem abrupt. They could have done that. They could have had any number of, we didn't see anything of the Nova Corps and Guardians of the Galaxy. Could have easily brought them into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This show wasn't used in the way that in the way that it could have fulfilled its best capacity. And
yeah,
I think
especially with Doctor Strange, and now we're getting into the multiverse of badness. There's a lot of stuff like a multiverse where we got a bunch of different Coulsons, or like a hodgepodge of different universe versions of the characters that now have to work together. So like a Fitz from like a weird universe with a Simmons from a weird universe. Like they could have. I think, I will say this because I know that this was back during the Inhuman time where I wasn't here, but I believe, and this is sad to say, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. killed Inhuman.
As far as the show that went nowhere?
Yeah.
Probably.
I believe that it's the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fault. Because look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Look at the fact that certain characters, you need to do a big, over-the-top movie to get people to care about them. Guardians of the Galaxy. If they were ever to make an Alpha Flight movie, at first that sounds stupid as shit, but then you get the right cast together, people are going to care about Alpha Flight. Where
you like X-Men, but you also like Tim Hortons? Because we got something for you.
You like Canadians. So I believe that that's what happened. Is Inhumans are such a powerful family. They are a powerful group. Black Bolt goes toe-to-toe with Hulk and Thanos, and they made him a bitch.
Getting the straight talk from Noah on this. I didn't watch any of that show because it had
I watched literally the first 3 episodes.
I didn't watch it either.
Because I wanted to know, because I love Black Bolt. That's the thing. I love Lockjaw. I love Black Bolt. All the others exist. All other humans are just inhumans.
Hey, Karnak can find the weak points in things and then karate chop them. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at.
The only thing I know about Marvel and humans characters is from Marvel Legacy.
I was going to say, Mike only knows Karnak because we used to play the game on Facebook. And he probably
That's very true. Yeah, there's a lot of aspects to the Marvel Universe that they can expand on and get to an epic place. Like anybody who knows who the Illuminati of the Marvel Universe are, those are the kind of plot lines that could top even the Infinity War Endgame stuff. And I think a lot of people don't think it's possible. I think Disney and Marvel are going to prove us all wrong and give us amazing, amazing stuff. I just wish that this vehicle could have been there. And it didn't even have to stay with all the same characters. They could have moved things around. It could have been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. West, where we deal with all these things that we're dealing with the Avengers West. If you want to bring Squirrel Girl into the universe, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to do it in just a movie. It would have been helpful to have this really, really weird character brought in on a show.
Episode.
Oh boy, come film that movie in Michigan. Heck yeah, I'll be here ready to go. I'll be a PA. I'll just bring people water because I'm happy the movie's happening.
I mean, yeah, I believe that you're right. I think they could have really... And I liked in the middle how the seasons were broken up into their own little mini spin-offs. Like, they had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. LMD. They had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Dark... Like, they made so that way you got super connected into that bit. So, yeah, they could have continued. They could have done Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Multiverse. They could have done Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy. They could have... I do believe that it could have continued on past even 5, which I'm trying to bring it back to the whole point in which we were originally talking. Yeah, we went into 7 and we got time travel, which was cool. But, yeah, we're now opening up multiverses. We're not... Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. could have been a show that lasted as long as Supernatural, but it would have had what Supernatural has, which is ups and downs. It would have had people falling off the wagon. It would have probably had like a weird episode where they brought back Sif or they brought Korg into it and they'd like bring people back for a little while and then it dropped. Disney knows how to reel people in. You make one cute character in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you make a lockjaw puppy and make it merchandisable and people are watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Who's the most talked about character from Captain Marvel? Not Captain Marvel, is Goose. That's it. That's all people wanted was Goose. I think what you're saying, and I also agree, is that everything existed in order to make Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. even better than it was and longer lasting than it was, but that it really was the abandoned child of the MCU, and so they were like, all right, well, let's make a show. We're here. We got the set. We got the characters. Let's keep going. And I think they did an admirable job.
I think some people liked Captain Marvel too. I'm the character. I'm just throwing that in there.
I don't have a problem with Captain Marvel. It's just Goose. He's a scene stealer. What are you gonna do?
I'm pretty sure that movie for some people it was like Goose is number one, and then there's an equal between Captain Marvel and Nick Fury, and then everyone else is there.
Jude Law will be there. You will not always see him, but he will always be there.
Just in his corner existing.
90s soundtrack.
That's what I liked.
Mall rat reference.
9 Inch Nails t-shirt. Can we make the movie now? Yeah?
Back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., though. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was co-created, as was mentioned earlier, by the Whedon brothers and Marissa Tangerowen, who's married to Jed. Other than the film, the original Avengers film, this is their first collaborative TV creator credit, though, of course, Joss also created Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Firefly, and Dollhouse. Based upon Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., are you motivated to watch any past or future projects that they create as a team or separately? And did watching past projects motivate you to watch the show? I will answer the second question. The answer is yes, because I love Joss Whedon's TV shows, and I've seen every single one of those things and own most of them. Not Dollhouse. I don't own Dollhouse. But I own all the other ones. And it was mainly because his name was on it and that it was sort of tied into this universe that I was just starting to watch the movies for at the time that I watched the show. And I would watch anything else that he creates for sure, but I probably would keep an eye on it if the other three did it as a team as well. So
yeah, the name Whedon definitely carries weight with it now, regardless of whatever personal problems he's going through. I mean, isn't it 3 brothers total? It's just Jed's the one who's the more active?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and also Marissa, if I'm not mistaken, she was also part of the Dr. Horrible's crew. Mm-hmm. I think there's a good enough foundation for interest in that. Like I said, I'm very much more character-based than production side, so it's more that you mentioned characters or actors from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. who are in Dollhouse that has me curious to watch that one, more so than, it was created by this person. Because as we've seen, sometimes, like, the guys who made Lost made Once Upon a Time, and honestly, I think Once Upon a Time was a little bit better.
No, not quite. The guy who made Lost was J.J. Abrams. They were the head writers in the second half, and then went off to make Once Upon a Time. But, as we all know, the second half of Lost was, okay, it's better than the third season. Okay, the fifth season's really good. Sideways. Backs.
Yep.
Flash sideways. Whatever.
Whole timetable is flipped.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's a good example of how sometimes you hit and sometimes your work's a miss. So I'm not always. It's rare that there's ever going to be someone just from the creative side that I have just faith in them to be like, you're doing a new show, I'm there. Well, Greg Berlanti has done an amazing job with the CW shows. If I see Berlanti's name on there, I'm going to check it out at least.
Dan Harmon.
Yeah. Yep, Harmon's.
You have some high love for Community. I'm going to have to go look at our list and add you to it if I haven't already. Because you've mentioned
the
it
fact
like...
that I'm not on it is actually quite upsetting.
I'll say it's probably the biggest insult you can possibly make to this man.
You just got into it. I'll double check.
Right, you didn't know. Just for future reference.
Got it! Check!
If you see a Community meme, tag him in it. He'll know if you don't. He has a radar.
I've learned something about Noah today.
Anything Donald Glover or Dan Harmon, he is there. He will be there.
Oh, so Childish Gambino as well. We don't talk about music.
I am the reason that most of my friends know who he is.
Oh, okay.
That's fair. That is fair.
I was just going to answer the question of if I see the Whedon. As long as it's not DC related, I will watch something that Joss Whedon does. I just believe that he doesn't understand DC writing or DC universe.
Oh, this is a full circle.
That kind of campiness.
Mike and I just had a whole conversation.
We touched more on Snyder's things. That does seem a little fair. Like I'm trying to think. Like Buffy is let's just face it, by far and away the best thing he's ever done.
Buffy's the
Probably
best.
not going to be topped anytime soon, if ever.
I can respect that.
So trying to take that frame and put it over either comic universe, Marvel's definitely the better fit. Marvel is a lot more boots on the ground rather than like idols in the sky, and that was part of their sci-fi budget at the time with Buffy, but that show was very much boots on the ground and ensemble driven. I think that's the strength that he needs to play into. I don't necessarily think he needs to try and ascend any kind of creational, I don't know what the word would be for it.
Creative?
Creatorial ladder. Creative. There you go with your words.
Sorry.
She got glasses on, folks. You know she knows stuff.
That's a
any kind of like
stereotype.
creative ladder in terms of TV production. I think he already and has existed in a very specific niche that he does extremely well, and I don't know anybody else who really can do it as well as he as him. The only shows that I would say maybe comparable that I would get like a Whedon feel from would be
Legends?
something like Community. Legends eventually. We were talking about this, like Legends as soon as
That's
they
what I thought about it. I was like, he could do an episode of Legends and I would watch it and like hope for the best. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. He does have a very
unique style. And maybe Eureka. Like and it's rare that I could even like be able to pinpoint something, but that's how specific his skill set is. And I think it's shown in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after he stopped being involved with it, not because he stopped being involved with it, but him and Jed are brothers. They've known each other their whole lives. He has seen everything that Joss has written since freaking one-page short stories. I think he knows exactly how to balloon those ideas up, and I think they did a good job of that with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I just love Joss. I do look at creators, which is why I ask these questions, because there are creators that, maybe more with me than with other folks, that I look to and say, I have to watch this show because you dreamed this up or got a team together and worked this out. So, yeah, that's how I feel. But this segues nicely into the next question. Would you follow any of the actors to future TV projects or past if you haven't watched them? I will.
Yeah, I 100% will, and then I always have this nice feeling when I see an actor from something in the past to something that I'm currently watching. So like if Phil Clark randomly shows up, even if it's for like a small bit on a show that I'm currently watching, I will immediately attach myself to his characters, good or bad, because I know that he's a good actor. So that's something that like I know all these actors, I can't wait to see them in other things. I can't wait to see what they can do outside of that, especially people who have been kind of quiet even though they've been acting a lot, like Fitz or Simmons or Matt. We know that Phil Clark and Ming-Na Wen, we know they're going to get more work. We just know it. I'm surprised Phil hasn't already appeared on The Mandalorian. I'm sure he will soon. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, like people like Fitz and Simmons and Matt who don't have the longest IMDb sheet. I can't wait to see what, now that they're more free, what they're going to be able to do.
Yeah, Clark for sure for me. I really love Ian DeCastecker, who was Fitz. I have a little crush on him. Maybe it's the accent, but I enjoy him. And I hope he gets more TV. He's got a lot of UK credits when I was looking and researching his actor roster, but I would love him to have another TV show or a nice flourishing movie career. I think he's got some potential. And I probably am interested. Ming-Na Wen, she's been going for forever. You're right. She's going to get more work, and I would watch it if she was in it. But I like
She's Mandalorian right now, or was at least. I haven't watched it, but I know she was in there briefly.
Well, there you go. So we'll get more work. Elizabeth Henstridge has an upcoming show called Suspicion, and I don't know enough about it. They haven't released a lot about it, but it's got a very intriguing title, and she's in it, so it might be worth checking out.
Another strength, I think, of Whedon's sensibilities, I think he really knows how to get the right person to be I don't want to say female protagonist, but that's like something that he specializes in, is having protagonists that are female. I think the people he gets to be these protagonists are very, very effective at it, because as everybody knows, first couple seasons of Buffy, a little rough. The first
season was rough. The second season was amazing because that is the Angel Buffy season. where Angels turns into Angelus. So the first season was wrong.
I was always not always Team Spike, but I was more Team Spike than Team Angel. There was a period of time where I was very much not Team Spike. If you know, you know. But
you can't. I always say, I know this is for the Buffy podcast. We've already done it. You can't be Team Spike without having gone through Angels first. That's what I always say. Anyway, continue.
But the point of that is that the first season, what kept me hanging on, and I'll unabashedly say it, was simping for the lead. She was wonderful to look at. She did a very good job. It was really only, because we didn't have the established ensemble at that point. They were just a bunch of side characters. And yeah, Anthony Head, great. He's got great presence, but that's still only, one other person. It really was Sarah Michelle Gellar that I think carried that show through, especially at that period of time. In the same way, I've been in love with Chloe Bennett since she came on screen. And
you have been very unabashedly in love with her, yes.
so that, especially that'll get you through the dry seasons of just, loving this person. Or once you get Fitzsimmons established as, honestly, their ship is a character, and once you fall in love with that character, that'll get you through some stuff. I think that these actors have a lot of power in that way, and because of that, anything that I see, Chloe Bennett's in this, I'm there. Let's go for it. Clark Gregg, he's just distinguished at this point. He's become the Hague Scotch that they reference so much in terms of, that's on the menu? Yes, I'll have some. Absolutely. I can't think of any actor from this that I wouldn't, at least I'll say from the final ensemble, that I wouldn't be super interested in. I didn't really know who played Hunter. It doesn't matter. I didn't know who he was. He reminded me of Charlie from Lost, but wasn't Charlie from Lost, which annoyed me. It's if you're going to remind me of him, you might as well be the same person. The audacity of him to not be Charlie from Lost.
But Charlie from Lost has that Lord of the Rings money.
He does. And, power to everybody's got Lord of the Rings money. We should all be so lucky as to have that kind of money. Besides him, and then that, not to say that I hated him, it was just he was just another actor playing this character who I never, got attached to. Anybody else from the show, if I see that they're in something, I'll be interested in it, depending on what platform it's available on. I'm not willing to break heaven and earth for everything that everybody might do. If Elizabeth Henstridge is I'm on a Starz original, it's well, good luck with that. I hope it does well. I will not be one of the reasons why it does well. But yeah, Chloe, Mac, I forget the actor's name, but he's
Mac's actor.
Yes.
Henry Simmons.
I think it's funny that they got a Simmons on there at some point. Anything that he does, I'll be ready to go for that. Yeah, Fitz is great. I do want to see that movie that he was filming, which kind of messed up his schedule for season 7. And yeah, I think I will check out The Dollhouse at some point. Because you said it was Sousa, and who else was on that?
Daikon Lockman Jiang.
Okay.
Was on it as well.
And she is great on Altered Carbon. If any of you are looking to get more Lockman in your diet, both seasons, more so the first, just because of presence. But
we actually have an Altered Carbon panel.
Nice.
Yep.
That'll be meaty talking for you guys to go through the main actor switch, which thankfully is something we didn't have to do. If they just recast Coulson, that would be in a whole other ball of fun. But
truth. We like to think we have responsibility now that we've been doing this TV reviewing podcast for some years. We have a responsibility to our listeners, to the TV viewing public, regarding whether or not these shows that we watch, do we recommend them? So the $1 million question, now that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is done, and we've gone through all of its many Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. qualities, would you recommend Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to others? Why or why not?
I say yes, just because since it is a serial sci-fi show, if it's that, any person who would enjoy those kind of shows, like you said, anything that's in this zone, you're kind of ready for it. That's indicative of most people who are interested in these things. There aren't a lot of super niche nerds, I think. I think we just love this heightened aspect of life. So I think anything with that, any person that's like that, especially now that it's completely completed and a lot of people like to binge, I think that's something that could feel comfortable recommending to people. More so, I know I said the opposite for Once Upon a Time, but that is it's a whole other different kind of supernatural thing. It's very Disney based, and it's very much more magic than sci-fi, and it doesn't seem like there's a big distinction, but it's actually quite different there. I think sci-fi is a little more accessible to people because every episode is a new something, and a new methodology for how to overcome these problems. So yeah, I think, yes, I would recommend this to the right people, a much bigger pool than some of the other shows that I try to recommend to people. But I'm not going to say like, oh, you really liked watching Sports Center? Hey, have I got the show for you? I mean, the stunt work in the show is admirable. That's another link to it that I could do. Like if somebody told me they really liked Into the Badlands or another very fight choreography based show, I could hand them this one because both the character Sky/Daisy and the actress Chloe Bennett, just the evolution of that character and their capabilities through the show was impressive enough. And I'm like, this is really, really good fight choreography. Obviously, everyone's been like shaken by season 1 Daredevil's hallway fight, and now everybody's trying to step up their fight choreography game. But yeah, I think that the work definitely pays off. And Ming-Na Wen does, there's stunt doubles in the show, obviously, but she does great as well. There's a lot of good work that went into the show.
I would for sure offer it to other people. Again, I would give the context of, hey, if you're really big into the MCU, I'd give context behind it, or I would really make sure that people enjoy sci-fi or really enjoy ensemble pieces. But yeah, for sure, I would definitely tell people to give it a watch. I wouldn't tell people to watch the spinoff for it, but I would tell them to watch it.
Okay.
Never gonna make someone watch Inhumans ever, unless it's a torture.
Well,
That would be downright I'm not that bad. I have more dignity than to finish that joke.
so
Do you, Micah?
Sometimes.
So I will say that I've tried to recommend Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Established comic book fans laugh in my face and call me names because they're like, Agents...
Give me their name.
One of them is my brother-in-law who's one of our panelists, so...
Hey,
Keyword was. It's not about who was there. It's about who's here now. They may have let this podcast die. We took Creed blood and we reinfused it. And we did. This podcast said, "Let me die." We said no. Been waiting the whole podcast to do that reference. So please keep that part in.
Okay. I'll be happy to keep that part in. But what I would say though is, if you're a hardcore and specifically comic book fan, I don't know that I feel like I have the place to recommend it to you because A, you're probably going to know more than I am, and B, chances are you tried it and you decided that you weren't devoted like Micah or Noah or myself, and you chucked it and you said there's better Marvel elsewhere like Daredevil or Luke Cage or whatever it is which they're very good. I love them. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's true.
And then the Disney Nation attacked.
Well, right. Which is a whole other...
Until Netflix attacked.
Right. There's a whole other impending group of podcasts. But if you are a sci-fi person, if you are a Whedon person, if you really enjoy something that's a little different, I think one of the best parts about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that it feels different from the genres it's supposed to be representing because it mashes a little bit of each of those genres and smushes it all together into something that's very unique. And then when you add a really good cast ensemble, I mean, the cast is the reason to watch this show. They're all so good. They're all committed. None of them phones it in. It's really, really good. They balance comedy against drama, tragedy against heroism. There's a lot of fun things happening, and it will keep you on your toes watching it. So whether it's more successful, less successful, you'll at least feel like you're along for a ride, and a really good ride at that. That's who I would recommend it to. I don't think I could recommend it to a comic book person, DC or Marvel, just because the DC person's going to get all snooty and the Marvel person's going to be like, is it tied to the MCU? And I'll be like, I can't answer that question. Ask Noah. So that's kind of where we're at.
On the flip of that, if you have a DC person who enjoys the CW shows, I think that's an easy, especially Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Or Flash, I think that's an easy transition to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You
Especially
think
if
so?
They say Legends. Well, if they say Legends is their favorite, then they...
That's true. The most analogous show out there is Legends of Tomorrow because it's a wacky cast ensemble that does a lot of time and space travel.
But they didn't do multiverse travel, which still makes me mad.
Well, I mean, we already had the Crisis.
Yeah,
There's
the
nowhere
Crisis.
to go anymore.
The Crisis is Crisis.
Yeah, but I meant like before, like that would have been the interesting thing about the season before Infinite Crisis would have been them having to go to different Earths.
That's true.
And they were kind of the catalyst that led to Infinite Earths more than anything else because they were literally jumping and finding all these paragons.
Somewhat fair.
Yeah,
But now, it is what it is.
It is what it is. All right.
Hashtag potential.
Do we drink here? I don't think we drink on this one.
Only if you got Hague, and it has to be Hague.
Well, that's very specific.
Somebody out there is going to be like, the moment I've been waiting for!
Do you think that these characters are truly done in the MCU? Because like Lady Sif, she's supposed to be making an appearance again after, the last time we saw her was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We haven't seen her since then. Like, do you think that we could possibly see Mac in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or anything like that? Do you think any of these characters have replayability?
I think the biggest determination for that will be whether or not the rumors about... Well, I've blanked on every important name. Daredevil. What is his name?
Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox.
Also
if the rumors of him being in the upcoming Spider-Man movie are true, and if they do it, and if it goes well, which I don't see why it wouldn't, because everyone loves these Spider-Man movies. Everybody loves Charlie Cox as Daredevil. I think that will be a bit of a door opener, and definitely if there's something that high profile, I think if that goes well, it would be very, very simple to incorporate Agents characters into the MCU or into these TV series. Like I said, if they do, and it's not even like a far-fetched idea, of Agents Academy show, I think there's pull for that. I think especially having, because they've got Sebastian Stan for so much. His contract isn't even halfway done for projects. He's going to be around for a while, which I know a lot of people were mad about the Luke Skywalker CGI something. I was like...
Instead of just using him, yeah.
Yeah, Sebastian Stan, like, it's been established, he kind of looks like young Luke. Could have done that. He's on payroll. He was probably in the building. He's probably loafing around somewhere. But no, I definitely think that there's room. I mean, there's that's the thing. What we're talking about with this show in total is that the higher-ups could have done X, Y, and Z. They didn't. So the show did what it had to do and became something that we loved. There's absolutely room and replayability for a lot, if not all of these characters. Will it get done? That's really the only issue is, are they going to greenlight it?
And I don't think they would. I agree. I mean, I think any of these characters could translate into other Marvel projects, but I just don't think that I don't think the company has put the time or care into it, and I just don't see it happening. They're still feeling out what they want to do with the things they got back from Netflix. So that rumor's out there. There's a second rumor that Charlie Cox might be reprising Daredevil in a miniseries that's just Daredevil. So, there's a lot of different percolations on the characters that they're getting things back for or developing further, and I just feel whoever said the abandoned child, I think it was Micah, I think that's what this show is the abandoned or the redheaded stepchild for the 70s sitcom loving people. So
anybody who knows comics, specifically Marvel Comics, knows that abandoning a child is a bad idea because 30 years later...
Especially a redheaded one.
Or especially a green-skinned, angry one, because they will find you later on the road and they will exact their revenge. I would say, saying all that, I'm fine if the show and its characters are left alone. If they recast any of these characters, I will be very, very angry. If they decide they want to bring Quake into their Inhuman show and they cast somebody else, provided that it's Chloe Bennett who said no, like, that's obviously do what you gotta do, ladies, your career. But, like, if they either don't approach these actors and offer it up to them first, not even like, do you want to be considered first, will you just say yes to do this? Or if they just recast them flat out, I will be very angry at whatever project that is. I will probably not support it. Depending on what it is, I may have to watch it just because of my own nerd ideals, but I will not be happy about it. That's what happens. You said it. The ensemble is the reason to watch the show, and the loyalty that kept this thing on the air longer than ABC wanted it on the air for is very real. I don't think that loyalty is going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. Don't
Phil
recast.
is going to show up again.
Probably.
They're going to do something in the 90s, or they're going to do something in the early 2000s, in which, like, a flashback, and to tie it in, they're just going to have him. That's why I think that there is a little bit of, like, especially with him or Mick, is because they've been in S.H.I.E.L.D. for so long, you can get an early 2000s flashback of early S.H.I.E.L.D. and have them bump into him, or have her hand a file to somebody.
And the fact that both of those actors have aged like fine wine, like flashbacks are easy. They both look as though it's frozen in time.
Or one might say, good scotch. Ha ha! I did one!
You can't see it, audience, but I'm doing a very goofy, dramatic, appreciative of that joke pose. You can't get this on other podcasts.
So anyway, is there anything else that you wish to say that you haven't already said, offered, thought about, ruminated upon about season 6, 7, or really all of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
If the stars align and somehow this finds its way to the ears of people who worked on the show, be it in the cast or the crew, and you make it all the way through all of the... Remember when I said my answers were going to be short at the beginning of the lightning round? Yeah, nope. That was a lie. If you've made it through all the way here, I would like, and I hope that somehow the cast and crew of that show know the importance of the show that they made, the impressiveness of what they were able to overcome to make the show, and the deep appreciation that all of the people who stayed on, who jumped onto the shark and then rode the shark through 2 more seasons. We really do appreciate the show. I will someday. I will rewatch the show, and then I have like a rule for like shows that I really like I finished The Good Place this year, and I was like, all right, 2 to 3 years before I can rewatch this because I need to forget enough to like really feel it again. This is going to be another show that I'm. Once the time is right and that I feel it in the air that it's time to rewatch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm going to be really excited to do that.
For me, kind of along the lines of what Micah said, because, I have my things where I, watch all the DCOM original movies. I know I'm insane. Or I watch the MCU in, number order and stuff like that. There will be, a time in which, because even though people don't appreciate it as much as they appreciate the MCU, it is a part of the MCU. It was a story that was told. It was given life through Avengers, and it created something that Marvel just didn't realize that they had by saying, oh yeah, we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but now we have a televised universe. And I don't think they really understood the power that they had, and I respected them for that. And in honor of it, when I rewatch the Marvel Cinematic Universe next, I will watch at least all the way up until the Life Model Decoy in Dark, because that's pretty much when it dropped off and stopped being an MCU thing. But in my eyes, it will always hold a spot in the MCU, and I think that people need to appreciate it for what it was.
Well, that's a very nice note to end this on, and so I'm going to, and I appreciate and thank very much Micah for hanging in there until the end, and Noah for jumping on board here, taking all the credit, being the representation.
Yeah, I jumped on this shark.
That's right. And rode the shark and all the things. And talking about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not only these last 2 seasons, but looking back at the whole show. And because we've done our very best to talk about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's now time for the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatosunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we have new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, all seasons of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are available to stream on Netflix, our unofficial non-sponsor and non-provider of free descriptions, despite the fact that our couch potatoes love to watch stuff on this service. Hint, double hint, although their competition's getting fierce, so we might not say their name as much. Anyway, if you have nominations for shows we should cover on our podcast, contact us via social media or email, or you can volunteer to be a panelist too. In the meantime, and until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!